He will. He'll find the odds really not quite so good as when he picked on little girls.
That's what they always do.
It'll be great big blokes this time, Axel. So good luck with that. Really hope they don't hurt you badly.
For legal reasons.
Know what I'm saying?
Legal reasons.
Stick with Andre. He'll take you through to 1 a.m. You've been an amazing audience tonight. It really has been a very special show in a very serious way. I'm going to be back tomorrow night with another edition of the Political Asylum. That will start at 7 p.m. as always. So thank you very much for your company tonight. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Be there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, under normal circumstances, Danielle Nichols joins me and we have a bit of fun and a bit of a laugh. And tonight's show will be entertaining, but also it is an important evening. The sentencing of Axel Rudakubana. He's been sentenced to 52 years in prison. He will get out if he lives that long, age 70, and I think we have to be realistic. I think it's unlikely that he will survive his prison experience. For legal reasons, I can't criticise or endorse that, but I think you know what I think, and I think you think the same thing. We wanted to bring in Danielle tonight simply because she's lost a child herself. It is not as a result of an act of violence or criminality. It was as a result of meningitis. But I think that she will be able to give us a sense of what parents might be feeling at this time. I thought that the families showed remarkable dignity in the face of an animal that is really beyond any words to describe him. On my YouTube channel, which is Andre Walker, I called for him to be, quote, put down and laid out the reasons for the death penalty. We can debate that. We're joined in a couple of moments by Simon Danchuk, the former Labour MP, who, whilst he is somebody who's incredibly strong on law and order, opposes the death penalty. But look, I'm just going to hand over to you, Danielle, perhaps to talk about the dignity that we saw from the parents today in the court.
Well, it's the lives that are ruined because, unfortunately, but for the child, that's the end of it. It's the repercussions that has on the rest of the families. You're talking about 3 families that have been directly affected, and as we know, numerous families that will be indirectly affected. We can see the little girls on the screen there.
Can I ask you this question?
Yes.
You had the situation of losing a child, and you've talked openly about it, which is why we're talking about it now. So I just want people to know that that Danielle is not happy to talk about it, but is willing to talk about it. What will the other children, the siblings perhaps, be feeling at this time? I mean, obviously, you can't talk to what it's like to be the victim of murder or to have a family member as victim of murder, but it's got to be an incredibly difficult moment, because whilst we can sit there and say how proud we are of the families, and I think we should be, at the same time, when the door closes tonight, they are there on their own to attempt to rebuild their lives. How possible is it to do it?
The trauma that will sit with these families is going to be absolutely immense, and the repercussions are enormous. Now, children naturally do have they dip in and out of grief. That's how children deal with it. Can I just take a minute though to say, BB, Elsie and Alice, who are the three little girls whose faces we've just seen on the screen, there they are. I think it's important that we talk about them and that we say their names, because we are going to be saying his horrible name over and over again. So I think it's important that we say their beautiful names. But yeah, as far as the repercussions within losing a child, statistics show that 80% of marriages do not survive child death. That's a stat. So,
and you were unusual because, and there's nothing dodgy about this. You and your husband effectively spend a lot of time apart because he's a football manager.
Yes.
And how did that help?
It doesn't help because the one thing we found was that, so what couples can sometimes do is they can start to blame each other. And even in this situation where we all know who is to blame, there'll be incidents where you'll say, I didn't want her to go.
Yes.
Or, do you see what I mean? Or,
yes.
you know, one of them wasn't feeling so great that morning, and parents had to go to work. So what you will find is, even though it's interesting, because in my scenario, it was the case of meningitis. However, a parent always takes responsibility.
Yes.
So
and in a sense, you wouldn't be a good parent if you didn't feel like that. So there's an irony there, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so that burden you carry with you. I always felt like we never blamed each other. However, you do find that does naturally happen. You will start to blame each other within a relationship.
Danielle, I was watching about Sarah Payne's family. You'll remember she was the girl that was murdered by Roy Whiting. And bluntly, what happened to Michael Payne was he drank himself to death. And they said it was very difficult within the family because he was completely incapable of assisting anybody else with their grief because he was so destroyed himself. Now, I would never be critical of him. I think he acted with great dignity, as did Sarah Payne, her mother. But fundamentally, his life was destroyed at that moment.
The pain of the only thing that's come second to losing a child is losing a parent, and there is nothing in comparison. So basically, a stat says that in 3 months, whatever experience you've been given, you will accept and start to come to terms with whatever it is. If you've been put in prison or you've been abused, or there's an element of coming to terms with it. But child death, they say statistically there's no time frame of after so long you will start to accept it, and it's with you. It's as prominent today for me, 12 years later, as it ever was.
I can understand that, but of course the problem is when you're in a position where somebody in the courtroom who's been found guilty of this says, I'm glad I did it, and effectively only regret is that he didn't kill more of the children. That is because what he says is, what he's basically saying to you, I would suggest, is this: my enjoyment of violence means more than your children's lives.
This man is a monster. I think that is clear for everybody to see. This is a case of, he doesn't suffer with a mental health issue. They've acknowledged that.
Yes.
So we're talking about a monster, in my personal opinion. That is how I see him. What I do say is, and this has really bothered me looking into this case, that I have massive issues with, was the PREVENT programme that was flagged up. I don't believe, and I said this at the time, didn't I, to you, when we couldn't talk about this.
Yes.
But I said I don't believe that this incident happens as an island floating. It's not just one day he was an all right bloke and he was going about his business, and the next day he was doing this. Because as some people do know, unfortunately, how horrific it was. And so this guy, it doesn't just stand alone. And I'm not saying that punishing those people will bring these children back. That I don't. It's not to change anything. However, this cannot happen again.
But I just wanted to pick up on something, because we were debating this before in the green room. You know, he may well have low-level mental health issues, but what is critical is the point that you made, that the court has determined that they are not a factor.
He's not mentally ill.
Yeah, so as an example, if you beat someone up because you're a violent drunk, you can't claim diminished responsibility, and rightly so. So he does have some issues,
Obviously.
apparently. But they're not severe enough to... I mean, I just think the whole thing is completely shocking, but I'll tell you what I found amazing. And I don't know if I'm still going to call it the dishonesty of the Merseyside police, but we are still at the stage of denying anything to do with the Al-Qaeda training manual, where he produced the ricin. The attack was of the type described as lone wolf attacks in the Al-Qaeda training manual. We mentioned that he loved Gerry Adams and that he loved Adolf Hitler. No mention of Osama bin Laden. Interesting, isn't it? But now, that may well be that he has never expressed any support whatsoever for Osama bin Laden, and yet he downloaded the Al-Qaeda training manual.
And what you will find is, in the grieving of these families, the fact that they have all been also hushed will not help the grieving process.
No.
Because the first thing any woman wants to do to figure something out is to talk about it.
Yes.
They will have immediately been told that they couldn't talk about it. Look, I go to support groups with parents who've lost children. Some people want to talk about the incident, some people don't. Some people want to talk about their children, some people don't. We're all different. However, it will not this being... as you're saying, the dignity they've shown. However, I'm really angry, because I believe that the way that the families have been treated, as in the way that they've been silenced and told, and what they can and can't say, and who they can and can't talk to, and what can and can't be told, I think that it will make things very, very painful for the families.
But we know, I mean, all I can say on that is that every news outlet in the country, and certainly me, in both my capacity at Talk and my capacity in other places, have been contacted by people claiming to be relatives of children that had been attacked, making allegations that he is an Islamic fundamentalist terrorist. I don't know whether those allegations are true. What I will say is that I think that the reason that the riots happened in Southport was the carefully worded statement. You know, when they were very clear that he was a choir boy when he was at school. You know, and he goes to church and was a choir boy. And fundamentally, the question was, did he come to the UK as a refugee? No, he didn't. Is he somebody who is a recent migrant to the UK? Well, look, Axel Rudakubana was born in the UK. His family were here for a whole 18 months before he was born. There are people who believe that it takes a certain amount of time to assimilate within the community, and perhaps somebody who's, for lack of a better word, indigenous to the United Kingdom would be less inclined to commit a crime like this. I don't know if it's true. But then the other question was, what religion is he practicing? Now, I'm told that in Belmarsh there's a rumour that he goes to mosque. I don't know if that's true. Similarly, we know that there were rumours that he shouted Allah Akbar and all this sort of thing. We don't know if they're true either. And unfortunately, we never will, which I think is one of the things that makes it even worse.
I think the whole thing has been handled horrifically, if I'm honest. I don't think that it has been handled right. I think that it's not... Look, we do not condone violence. But you can understand why people were very, very angry. I think in any other situation, it was very obvious that he'd committed the offences, and yes, he had to have his day in court. But I believe that there was a very strange gut reaction, it seemed, to him that seemed protective.
Yes.
And that gut reaction of him instantly being protected is going to rile people up after the heinous crimes that they committed.
But the police didn't say nothing. They said he was a choir boy who regularly attended church.
They should have said nothing, yeah.
And I find that despicable. Now, look, I think the other person that we've got in the studio is a really brilliant person to have, simply because whilst he wasn't the Member of Parliament for Southport, he is a former Member of Parliament from the northwest of England who, having been MP for Rochdale, knows a huge amount about the public reaction to crimes being covered up. The grooming gang issue is a huge one. Oh, by the way, just to say, there will be a public inquiry into Axel Rudakubana. There will not be a public inquiry into the grooming gangs, which I find interesting in of itself. But anyway, Simon Danchuk, look, all I can say is the floor is yours. What's your take on all of this?
No, well, I mean, my thoughts are obviously with the family and the community as well. I mean, it's truly awful, and I've got four children, but I struggle to comprehend what it must be like for those families going through this, and it's helpful to have the insight that you've provided, Danielle. In terms of the politics around it, because whether we like it or not, there are some politics around it. I mean, no doubt about that. I think the Prime Minister's called it wrong on a number of counts in terms of this significant, totally tragic incident. First of all, I think he should have said more when it first occurred. I think he should have been more instructive about why it had happened and how it had happened and who was responsible for it. And he can hide behind the Crown Prosecution Service advising him not to say too much. But listen, I think
he represents our country.
But also, Simon, I appreciate that it is the job of the lawyers to be risk averse in this thing, but there is a wider media environment. And also, I'll tell you something else. I have never seen a trial collapse because of this sort of thing. I've served on various juries, and what they always say at the beginning is there may have been press coverage about this, just ignore it.
Yes.
Which is what juries do. They tend to be responsible. They're not idiots. I think the fact that there have been some rumours on Twitter that Axel Rudakubana was a recent migrant, if you went into the court, you would know he wasn't. So why would you? I don't buy it.
No, exactly, and it has a relationship with the rape gangs. If you allow a void to occur, as we did on the rape gang situation, then the far right will fill it. And the Prime Minister allowed a void to occur, and that's part of the problem. He's spoken out on many other occasions straight after an incident's occurred, so that's a bit less of the solicitor, the lawyer from Keir Starmer, and a bit more
Prime Minister.
More Prime Minister.
The problem is he's hopeless.
Well, exactly. No, he calls these things wrong. And let's just examine some of the language that is used more recently. So after the incident, and particularly over the last few days, he's talked about this being a new phenomenon, this lone attacker. It's not a new phenomenon at all.
No.
There are other instances, but that's what he's called it. That's totally untrue.
The Manchester bomb was...
exactly. The whole idea about Amazon and the knife being bought on Amazon. Why are we talking about that? It's government. Government and the Home Secretary's language that's trying to move the agenda in that direction. We shouldn't underestimate that. And then thirdly, the Prime Minister said, failures of the state. This isn't failures of the state, whatever that might be. This is failures of individual public servants who failed to act, whether it's senior police officers, people in the Prevent scheme, or within the local authority.
Can I ask you, if you are a parent, if you're a parent and you do not do your legal duty to take your child to school, then you will be prosecuted and fined. Axel Rudakubana was legally a child. Why is it that had he been under 16, his parents had failed to take him to school, they'd have been prosecuted, but failure to stop him knifing people to death has no impact on their parenting whatsoever? Would I be completely unreasonable if I said that if your child commits a crime of this level, lock you up as well for being bad parents?
I think there are real legitimate questions to ask around the family and the parents on this.
Yes.
And I do think immigration comes into it. They've come from Rwanda. I know the country well. My wife is Rwandan. I've visited the country many times. So the question then arises, why were the family given the right to remain in Britain? It's a safe country. They could have returned to the country. So why were they allowed to stay in Britain?
Just to explain one thing, because people will ask this. Your wife is not from a British family that moved to Rwanda. Your wife is Rwandan. She follows the Christian Church of Rwanda, whatever that is. I'm not quite sure. But she is, and you are very, very clear that if you are a refugee from Rwanda, you do not need to be in the United Kingdom anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And from what you've said, it's not that long since they came to Britain. So they didn't come during the genocide or anything like that. But even if they had done, the question would be, why can't they go back? And I think it's a legitimate question to ask. And some of the points about how they've parented this person, and they can't have it both ways. They can't have him, well, he's a child, so he can't be kept in prison for a whole life term, and then, he's made his own decisions as a child. They have to take responsibility for it.
I wonder,
and questions have to be answered.
And I wonder if you pull your child out of a taxi because you believe they're going to attempt some sort of stabbing atrocity at a school, how is that not you disguising an offence that you know is about to take place? I don't know the precise legal details of this, but they knew he was going to stab up a school of some description.
He's been carrying a knife on 10 occasions. He's been excluded from school because of this action. The father stopped him from going and carrying out an attack on a different occasion.
But did he phone the police on that occasion? I don't know. It's not been reported.
These are the questions that must be answered.
Yeah, they must be answered.
Absolutely.
And the families, that's what they deserve to get answers to.
Absolutely.
Because it's things like this really annoy me. Nobody wants a pity party. These families have got to get on with their life and rebuild their lives, and there should be as much support and help and guidance and answers for this family as could possibly be. That's what we owe them. We owe them that.
But why isn't the Prime Minister, instead of saying it's a failure of the state, which is just a nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
What sort of answer is that? That's no answer at all. Why isn't he coming out and saying, we will find out where if these parents failed, if they could have done more, we'll find out which individual police officers should have done more, who in Prevent...
But also...
I know, because to say Amazon sells knives is one of the... Like you say, it's just not reading the temperature of the nation at all. Exactly. It's ridiculous.
But what about...
A little boy, also 12, has been stabbed in Birmingham. A little boy called Leo, say his name again. But this is ridiculous. There is clearly a problem, and it is not because of the sale of knives. Because you can go into someone's kitchen and take
the reality is that what is happening here is a lack of community cohesion. But I'll tell you what, we have got... I mean, I don't bring personal experience to this, but we've got two brilliant people in the studio. Let's stick with this. Let's go to the break, and we're going to talk about the death penalty. We're going to talk about where we go next as a nation, because I don't believe this is just about Axel Rudakubana. I believe it's about communities that have been fractured by uncontrolled immigration and the police giving up. More next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to Talk. I'm Danielle, this is Andre. We're joined by the wonderful Simon, and unfortunately talking about something absolutely terrible.
Is it possible you couldn't pronounce his surname?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't want to get it wrong.
Right, fine. Simon Danchuk, the former Labour MP for Rochdale. Well, you know, we normally have a really jovial time together, but tonight's not the night for that. However, we will be taking your calls later. 0344 499 1000. My view is very firmly, well, look, at the end of the day, I'm quite robust on this. I've said prosecute the parents if we can, and I've also said let's bring back the death penalty. Simon, you are... I mean, people will assume because you're a former Labour MP that you're a bit of a social liberal. That is not really the case. But you're not keen on the death penalty.
No, I'm not. No, but I would describe myself as being tough on crime and tough on those that commit crime. But I'm not in favour of the death penalty, quite simply because I think it's a greater punishment to incarcerate somebody for a very long time than it is to end their life. And if we take this person, this murderer, as an example, I think he's better punished, kept inside. You can have an argument about the cost.
But we're paying for that, for 52 years.
Well, is it 50,000 a year for 52 years? It's a significant amount of money.
I suspect he won't last that long in prison, to be quite honest.
Do you know, let's just deal with that issue right now, because whilst we are not allowed to in any way endorse criminality, let me tell you, I'm going to say absolutely nothing to discourage anybody from doing anything to him, because I'm legally allowed to say nothing, and that is precisely what I'm going to do. Say absolutely nothing.
And that's what we know what will happen, and you know, people in prison will look down on him in a significant way, won't they? There's no doubt about that.
And
his life will be a miserable, and I'd rather he had a miserable life than no life.
And I'll tell you something else about him.
He should have to suffer.
I don't know how you say this, but you know, I remember. I'll tell you a little story. I tweeted after one of the attacks. I think it was Ariana Grande, right, where everybody who had, you know, a teenage niece or whatever, a relative who was a teenage girl, all of them wanted to go to it. I didn't really know who Ariana Grande was, but this was a huge thing for them. And I thought, you know, you go to your first concert as a teenage girl, and what happens is somebody blows it up, right? So I had a photo of myself with my sword. And I bet the Islamic State 50 grand to come around to kill me. And I said, if you kill me in my own home, I will give you £50,000. Now, people widely mocked me for doing that, which doesn't bother me, but I'm still very much alive. And I did send my details to them. But the reason I did it was this. To demonstrate these people aren't terrifying, actually what they are is people who want to bully little children. They're not going to turn up and start having a fight with a big bloke like me or you, even though they would probably win because we're not particularly fighters. But I just wanted to demonstrate the cowardice of these people. Axel Rudakubana, he's going to try his stuff in prison and he's going to meet some nightmares. The sort of people that he's not willing, because I'll tell you what, he wouldn't have attacked the dads.
No, absolutely right. You're exactly right. It is interesting who they target, isn't it? And he went out of his way to target these particular children. If you hear how he went about it and the effort he put into targeting these people, and knowing that there wouldn't be many parents there.
Because he wasn't willing to fight anyone his own size.
No, exactly.
But that won't be a problem for him in future, believe me. And I think, I mean, it's amazing because, of course, he will be in the segregation block, which is often called the nonce block. And just to explain, that's not a reference to one particular crime. It's a reference to a crime that's so-called nonsense, as in you would never, no legitimate criminal, well, no, that sounds silly, would ever do it. So those are things like rape and murder of children and things like that. But there will be people in there who are also former gang members who've been segregated, who will, the minute they see him, if they ever see him, if they ever walk past him and he's unguarded, they will go for him.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And I suspect if what I'm told from what it's like, or it can be like in prison, he will be left unguarded for a short period of time.
Yes. No, so what you're basically saying is that prison guards aren't going to go out of their way to be nice.
And neither should they be.
Well, once again, they can only do their best, Simon. That is my very, 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 very firm view on this. So, where do you go from here? When, I don't know if you've had any specific experience of this sort of thing when you're an MP, but when there is a huge disturbance, when there has been significant problems, when a community is reeling, how do leaders put these things back together?
I think that's a really good question. You get out there within the community and you speak to people and listen. I think you listen and reflect.
And presumably people, as a Member of Parliament, people will want to shout abuse at you for the perceived failure of the system, and you have to accept that.
Yeah, I think so, that's right. But listen to what people have to say and then reflect that. You know, you are a parliamentarian and you go back to Parliament and you report to them what you've been told by your electorate.
Yeah.
And I have seen some of that, I think, today. I think the MP for Southport, whose name escapes me, newly elected MP, I think he's been saying that we should look at a full life term for people who are of this age if they commit such crimes, you know.
Yeah.
So I think he has been reflecting that to an extent.
Apparently his name's Patrick Hurley. Presumably he's a Labour MP. He's just come in.
Yeah.
You know, I think that they should have to trace this person's life and see how the system failed them so very badly. And I think that's the minimum that should be done, in my opinion, because you can't bring those little girls back, but you can do your best to stop this happening in the future. Now, Andre and I know that I feel really strongly about this. I know it's not this simple, but I believe that teenagers have been very neglected. I think that within the system that we live in at the moment, I think we live in a really nice area, and there's still a place where I refuse to let my boys go on their own. It's basically a walkway through the woods, and it's beautiful. The council have paved it, and people cycle up and down, but after a certain time of night, it's known for crime. There have been knife attacks. This is in, believe me, a really, really nice little pocket where we live.
Yeah.
So if this carrying knives is clearly a problem. Do we need metal detectors at schools? Is this, where do we go from here? Because saying don't sell them is one of the silliest answers.
Yes.
I honestly couldn't believe what I was reading this morning when it said Amazon shouldn't sell knives.
On the front of a number of papers.
Outrageous.
Absolutely. And there's one report that's suggesting that one of his parents received the knife when it was collected at the door, when Amazon delivered it. So an adult has to collect it.
So I constantly order knives for cooking.
Of course.
My son has sometimes had the door and said, Mum, you've got to come to the door, and I've had to show my passport as well. Right. So, you know,
but also the other thing is, and this is the argument they have in the United States of America about guns. I mean, if you were to even ban the sale of knives completely now, knives would not disappear.
No.
Right. No. So it's just a high road to nowhere. What they're not willing to say is that...
Look, knives have always been around and we've not been in this scenario, so...
But let me say, what I think we've done is import a knife culture. So I've spent time in sub-Saharan Africa. I was in...
that would make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Sierra Leone. I've spent time in Rwanda. We talked about the genocide in Rwanda. People were killed with machetes. They weren't gunned down. No. They were killed with machetes. You go to Sierra Leone, people were killed. You see people now with limbs missing. They were asked which limb they wanted cutting off.
Oh, wow.
With a machete. And what we see on the streets of London, and we might get onto the topic, loads of illegal immigrants coming into Britain, into London, and we've imported not just knife crime, but machete attacks. That's what we're seeing on our streets. It's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
And where has it come from? And how is it explained?
Yeah, but you're not. I'm not saying that in reference to this show, but you can't say that, Simon. That's the response of the Keir Starmer brigade.
Oh, they don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about a failure of the state, whatever that means. Let's be honest about what the causes of this are. Yeah. And some of it is that we've imported this type of attack.
Well, it has to be because of the statistics.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what big parcel and big bowl you wrap it up in. The stats are that immigration's very high, and the stats are so's knife crime.
Yes.
So,
but this is precisely the point that Douglas Murray made, which caused much anger and consternation when he said that whilst not every Muslim is a terrorist, every Muslim terrorist is a Muslim, and therefore if you do not have mass immigration from the Islamic world, you will not have Islamic terrorism. It's as simple as that. Similarly, if you're talking about a part of the world, and I'd never thought about this before, where machete attacks are part of the culture, then if you import people from that then machete attacks will become part of your culture. It's cultural enrichment, because of course the point is about cultural enrichment. They refuse to accept there's any bits of foreign culture that are bad.
Yeah.
Whereas I say voodoo magic is not a great thing. I've not been culturally enriched by female genital mutilation.
Yeah, exactly.
No, exactly, and that's something else that's been imported, and we don't talk enough about it. So you're right. The negative aspects of cultures that are brought into this country can have a devastating effect on our communities, and that's undoubtedly what we're seeing.
That kind of brings us on to the 1 in 12 illegal migrants in London, which we were going to talk about in this segment. But uncontrolled immigration. I'm going to suggest to you, Simon, that one of the problems that we've got in this country, so we've got people coming in too often. We're coming in too many numbers in order to integrate them. Enoch Powell said it in a slightly stupid way with the Rivers of Blood speech, and actually I think set back the debate on immigration quite considerably by doing it. But if you look at the speech in total, what he says is, well, if you bring people in with no prospect of decent housing, if you bring people in and don't get them to speak the language, if you bring people in whose culture is completely alien, then it will lead to violence on the streets. And I think that has been definitively proved right. And so I guess you come from an area that the one thing that they had was a community cohesion. I mean, frankly, creating the Labour Party in order to represent them, where they take it from not having a political party that represents them at all to building one and taking government, which is a significant achievement in of itself. Protection of the skilled working class through the trade union movement. All of that has been smashed to pieces. In the reality is Labour is about London lawyers now. The trade union movement is much more of a minority sport than when you were younger. And the sense of community cohesion and having a skilled working class has been destroyed.
Yeah, completely. And I think people have had enough. I think we're at that stage now, and we're seeing it in America, aren't we? And we're seeing it in large parts of Europe, in actual fact. And it's not just older people that are looking to reform or whoever else.
Yeah.
Younger people as well.
Yeah,
they have had enough of this.
They have had enough, yeah.
It's not Keir Starmer that's living with the consequences of high illegal immigration. Most asylum seekers aren't placed in Keir's constituency.
No.
They're placed in Rochdale and other parts of the north and northwest and northeast. That's the reality of it. And living with that has been devastating for people.
My understanding is, and you're both parents of teenagers. I'm not a parent, but I've been told that in class, you are no longer allowed to be honest and open about your views. It is not an open forum anymore. But the playground very much is. Yeah. And what these kids do is they say, just say that in the class, but secretly we know it's a load of old rubbish.
And anything, it drives it underground, and then that's where things become toxic, because they can't have these conversations with reasonable adults to bash it out. I mean, we do have conversations like this within our household, but children don't feel they can, and then it drives it underground, and then that's when things get dangerous.
It's exactly right. My teenage sons tell me what some of their teachers have told them in school, and it's a real left-wing agenda. There's no doubt about it, to the point where the 16-year-old has gone in the opposite direction. If you want to rebel now, you don't go to the left or anarchy, you go to the right.
I know.
That's the consequence of what's being driven.
But the stupidity of this, we're not going to have to go to a break. The stupidity of it, you're accusing teachers of being far left. You're a former Labour MP, and what I keep saying every time I have you on my show, your views have not changed.
No, absolutely.
I'm a Labour voter. I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah. But the Labour Party's left us.
Yeah.
It's gone to this North London Labour elite view of the world, which doesn't correspond with real working class people from the north.
And it feels like it's become very snobby and elite, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Keir Starmer has told a group of people who rioted and protested from a council estate in a Labour constituency in the northwest of England. He's described them as far right. I mean, how big was the BNP vote around there? It's a Labour constituency. It's like, well, Rochdale's full of the far right. Is it really?
No.
Is it really?
It's really not.
No. He probably struggled to understand what we're saying. He wouldn't get the accents even, probably.
It's crazy. OK, look, we're going to stick with this topic. We'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to Talk. I'm Danielle. This is Andre. We're here with you until, well, I'm not quite sure how long I'm staying.
Well, I just want to say this is a kind of last minute change.
There you go.
This is a last minute change. We wanted Danielle and Simon Danchuk to come in simply because Danielle has lost a child herself and is from the north of England. Admittedly, she's not from Southport, and Simon Danchuk is a former Labour MP. And we wanted to have a special show to talk about the situation with Axel Rudakubana, because it seems like the body politic, the powers that be, believe that this is only about the Prevent programme, this is only about social workers, this is only about teachers, whereas we think it's it's much more of a societal breakdown and also related to uncontrolled immigration. And Simon, you touched on in the previous segment about this machete culture in parts of Africa, specifically Rwanda, and of course it had never crossed my mind, because the Rwandan genocide was a machete genocide, really very unpleasant situation. And now we've got 1 in 12 residents of London are illegal migrants. And we just don't know who they are and where they're coming from. And there's no way that you can incorporate them or ensure that they assimilate when they're coming over in these numbers, can you?
Yeah, no, that's right. And these latest figures, which show, it's from a report, I think, from Thames Water, interestingly,
bizarrely,
that commissioned this. I suspect that they commissioned some research around the real numbers that are used in their services.
Right.
I suspect that's why they end up knowing this. But I still think it's probably an underestimate, actually,
well,
1 in 12.
I was listening to someone...
You think it's an underestimate?
I would have thought so.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody on TikTok School, as you do. But basically, he was saying that the best way to assess it would be through schools, because everybody wants their child educated. And so if you looked at the school system and in that respect, you'd probably get a better idea of numbers. Yeah,
and it's just like the illegal immigrants. We only talk about those that are coming over on the boats who are actually intercepted, but the truth of the matter is there's lots coming into the country who are not intercepted,
exactly.
who then go into the informal economy and aren't counted by anybody.
Exactly.
So I suspect the numbers
I remember I worked for a company in Salford, and we had a chap who was claiming that he'd been injured in the warehouse, and that's why he had a bad back. And we suspected that we knew he was also a taxi driver who'd been involved in a road traffic accident, and we suspected that he was trying to claim from our insurance illegally. And so we actually went over to Rochdale to go and find him at the bizarrely at the corner shop that he worked in. And of course, the chap we found using his NI number was not him. And in fact, we found maybe 15 or 20 people who were all using the same national insurance numbers, and I think it would be harder to do it now. But what was amazing was the number of people within the Asian community in particular who simply assumed that we all think they look the same, which of course we don't. But the sharing of documents is absolutely huge.
Oh, the number of scams that are going on is just incredible. And the people who are working in the informal economy, and people, we see it, don't we?
What sort of
actions ever taken.
What sorts of jobs do they do? Is it just in the restaurant business?
Oh no, it can be quite varied. I've met, if I'm completely honest with you, I've met Albanians who don't have the right to be in this country.
Yes.
So one of them's doing sophisticated electrical work on building sites. The other's doing a tradesperson.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so there's collusion in this.
You wouldn't think that was able
Well,
to...
there's collusion in this to get prices right and all the rest of it.
Right.
So bigger profits can be made by construction companies and all the rest of it. But then working in other professions as well, in terms of lettings and things like this. So it's quite varied, let's be honest about it. It's not just...
So what we think of is the dodgy Indian takeaway with 2 or 3 people in the kitchen. The sort of the Phoenix Nights Chinese chefs type people. If you remember the TV series with Peter Kay. But it's not like that, is it?
It's not just that, for sure. No. And then some of the illegal immigrants that are coming into the country are coming not to work, coming to commit crime. Let's be honest and have a straight conversation.
Asher Gould's cousin went to Israel with me on this trip that I was taken on by the National Jewish Assembly. And it doesn't matter that he's Asher's cousin, and it's no particular relevance that he's Jewish, but he owned a nightclub that had gone bust as a result of COVID, and he'd had to refurb it. He had to change the whole thing into accommodation for migrants. Don't quite understand how that works, and I can't quite picture it in my head, but nonetheless, that's what he'd done. He says that in the history of his business, he has never, ever had any Albanians sleep one single night in his hostel. They all sign in with the Home Office and leave immediately after having signed in, but none of them has ever slept a night there. And he said that what his theory is, that is because they are coming over to join criminal gangs and their accommodation is already organised for them.
Yeah, I can believe that. And the public see a lot more of this than perhaps what government do. Or government tells you you're mad.
I remember in 1999 when Tony Blair brought in uncontrolled immigration, Andy Burnham said publicly, and I quite like Andy, he's a friend of my dad's, but he said publicly that there was no increase in immigration to Lee. Now, you remember Lee when every single person was white. The ethnic minority population, as you know, were Ukrainians and Poles who'd come over after the Second World War. So whilst you had names like Danchuk, everybody was white, everybody was Christian. And then you started seeing burkas, and the local Labour MP was telling you weren't seeing them. Yeah. And it was just ludicrous.
It's just nonsense, just appalling. I'll tell you who's doing well on this is Rupert Law, though. He's a new MP, Reform MP, and I'm not being party political. He's asking so many questions. You can
That's
only
what
ask,
we need to do.
Totally. And there's
but we're not allowed to ask questions, because if you ask questions, you're far right.
Oh, no, exactly.
It's just silly, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We need to, if we don't ask questions, if we don't have the conversations, we'll never get to the bottom of it.
Absolutely. And that's what the government don't want us to get to the bottom of. But he's calling them out. And you can only, people won't know this, you can only ask 20 written questions a day in Parliament. That's the maximum. And how many is he asking every day? He's asking the full maximum.
Good for him.
Yeah, staff.
I've got to be honest with you. I worked for the Member of Parliament for Romford, Andrew Rosendale, and I think it may have been us that caused the 20 question limit because we asked a fair number. Because what we used to do, we would literally sit there and think of anything we could think of and just trawl for information. Now, they said it was an illegitimate thing to do, but I'm not sure that's right. But I have to say to you, look, this is where it's going to get interesting and political, and perhaps we could talk about this after the break, because I think that Reform UK are going to win the next election, simply because I think we're at the stage now where they're getting support from all sides, not because people necessarily support their right-wing position or left-wing position on other issues, simply because people want action. But we're going to continue to talk to Simon Danchuk straight after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, you're watching Talk. I believe you got a message.
Well, we've got more than one message,
Just
right?
one.
Let's just be
We've
clear.
got one message.
That always annoys me when Asher...
Yeah, we've got to explain that.
Asher's back tomorrow when he always goes,
He's fine.
a message has flooded in. Right, we do get messages, right?
He's fine, by the way.
Okay, he's just taken the night off. I went out drinking with him the other day. It was quite good fun. That's the whole
Could he keep up?
Oh,
with
come
you?
on, be realistic. No, we left drunk as a skunk, and then I went to a further party.
Of course you did.
And drank all night. Okay, this message is, Andre, I'm your #1 fan. Of course you are. Somebody said is that my only fan? And I'm thinking, that has a different meaning nowadays. That doesn't mean what it meant a few years ago. Okay, Andre, I'm your #1 fan. Today I had my first chemotherapy treatment at North Tees Hospital. Shout out to the staff in the chemotherapy day unit. That's Anne in Teesside. Well, yeah, Anne, thank you so much for being my only fan. I'll set up the website.
You've got a handful.
I've got more than a handful.
You've got a handful.
Anyway, more than a handful's a waste. But anyway, it is a sad day. And for those of you that just tuned in, we're talking about Axel Rudakubana, somebody who I think is... I mean, look, it would have... I don't know how you say this properly without sounding ridiculous. It would have been nice if he cared, but he doesn't. He's delighted with what he did, and his only regret...
He wouldn't have done what he did if he cared, would he? Let's be honest. What did we expect from a monster?
Yeah, but you get people like terrorists who've blown up a pub or something who go, well, you know, I had a political cause. I'm sorry for the people that died. This guy's only regret is that he didn't get to kill more. Although, as we've said, now I just want to be clear.
Did he intend on taking his own life? No. Okay.
Not at all. Let's just be clear, whilst we can't encourage criminality, we can fail to discourage it. And let me just say to you that his opportunity to attempt violence in prison will be never-ending, and he will be picking on people his own size. Okay.
We've got a story here. The Swiss Burka ban is to take effect from 2025. Basically, the Swiss have prohibited facial coverings in public spaces, which were widely known as a Burka ban and will take effect on January the 1st, the government said this Wednesday. I think they followed France in this, is that right?
Yeah, France did it a few years ago. It's funny, though, because France banned religious dress in school some time ago. It used to be typical, I don't know if you know this, for French boys to wear a gold chain over their school tie after doing their first Holy Communion, and that was banned by the government on the grounds they didn't want to be inconsistent. So when they banned religious headscarves in schools, they said, well, we have banned crucifixes as well. The Burka ban. Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I can't walk into the Bradford and Bingley with a motorcycle helmet on.
Exactly.
So...
and I think that if look, they're pushing us towards this facial recognition, cameras everywhere, that's where they're pushing us, isn't it? They want to keep an eye on us all. So I think that in that respect, then you shouldn't be able to cover your face.
By the way, Danielle... The hypocrisy from these people. So when Danielle moved to Saudi Arabia, I bought her some traditional Saudi Arabian clothing, and they said I wasn't allowed to present it to her on Earth.
I didn't need to wear it.
She did. When she saw her husband in the hotel, she came out and presented it.
You just made this story up in your head. You've made this story up.
That is true.
Never happened.
Look, I find this difficult, Simon, simply because my instinct is to say that it is ludicrous for the government to tell you what to wear. Right, utterly ludicrous. I mean, you know what? I'm not sure, and I know this sounds silly as well, I'm not sure I can think of an argument why public nudity should be illegal, simply because why should the government tell you to what to wear and when to wear it? But at the same time, I worry that the burqa is a political statement, and I'll explain why. Look, the burqa is to Islam what a raincoat is to Christianity, i.e. in many Christian countries it's wet, so you need to wear a raincoat. In many Muslim countries there are sandstorms, ergo a burqa is a particularly good idea. But where Muslims come to the UK from do not have sandstorms. The burqa is not a popular item in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and many people have come to this country not wearing that item, or the families didn't, and now they've adopted it as a statement of Islamic nationalism, and that I think raises questions.
Yeah, no, I would ban it. And my normal position would be, as you suggest, which is let people wear whatever they want. But the suppression that it's around in terms of gender, I think, is a big issue.
90% of French women surveyed who wear the burqa say that they don't want to.
Oh, really?
90.
No, that is really interesting. I didn't know that. And that proves the point. And I take a view, you might remember Jack Straw. I used to be a local Labour councillor in Blackburn.
Oh, right.
Jack Straw was the MP.
Yes.
And he used to say he would ask the woman, if a woman came to his surgery, he would ask them to remove the face mask so he could see who he was talking to and what it is about, because you want to read the face and everything else. And this is a really significant
Although I will
issue.
say one thing.
I felt very strongly about COVID masks, so it's not picking on anything. I think you should be able to.
But yeah, well, to be fair, and I don't mean to sound bad, but banning COVID masks, I mean, that could be seen as racist against Chinese people because they love them in London, don't they?
Yeah,
no, they do. They do. It's
Are you
always.
allowed to say that?
But all the pro-Palestine marches and rallies and all the mass that they wear, I think it's so that they can be intimidating, so they can be threatening. I think we have to challenge this stuff, actually. I really
I'll tell you what I did. I went round during COVID just in order to troll the world because you were forced to wear the face mask. This was before I got the fake I'm exempt badges. But anyway, I used to wear a mask and sunglasses and a baseball cap. And I thought, well, screw it. Who cares if you've told me to wear this thing? And of course, people would look at me and they think I'd looked a bit strange, but it doesn't bother me because they don't know who I am.
Yeah,
but,
no, exactly.
But I mean, the other I genuinely think that if you think wearing a burqa is sensible in the UK, you're an idiot. But simply because there's no requirements in the Quran whatsoever to wear something like that. And as I say, putting on a facial covering when you leave the house in Saudi Arabia is often an eminently sensible thing, not the bits where you were.
But even still, it's not as common as you might think in Saudi Arabia.
See, I thought when I bought you, I'll be honest with you, when I bought you the full burqa, I genuinely thought you actually had to wear it.
No, there was a time. It was banned, I think.
I mean, I was quite pleased about that because what I said to Danielle was, I said, no, listen, we are supportive. We've talked this entire show about standing up for the culture and traditions of the country you moved to.
I agree.
Danielle moved to Saudi Arabia.
I covered myself when I went out. It was difficult, but I did it.
But that is another reason to ban it, which is integration, to enable and encourage women who are coming here to integrate into our community, our society.
And how much of a difference, I know we've only got 2 minutes, but how much of a difference does it make, Simon, to have people being in the same places, dressing in the same way and interacting?
Listen, if we're completely honest about this, it's uncomfortable seeing people dressed like that. That's how I feel. I think there needs to be. I think they're right, and this isn't a radically right-wing government that's doing it either.
In fact, quite the opposite, I would say. Really.
I mean, my mother once said to me, "God wouldn't have created women if He thought they looked that bad." Yeah. I mean, it goes too far, I think.
It is, and I don't know if you know the reasoning behind being that the more that you cover yourself up, the more that you apparently love your husband.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can I be honest with you?
And then that brings its own pressure,
that is all retrofitted. The reality is it is a very, very sensible, practical item for a sandstorm. You stick it on over the top, often they're very light, so you're wearing your normal clothes underneath.
However, the colour black is a strange choice because it's such a hot country.
Fair point.
And the men all wear white, which is considerably cooler. So, yeah, I don't know. It's difficult.
OK, well, we're going to do the press preview. That'll be up in a couple of moments. I think we're going to keep Danielle Nichols and Simon Dantruk around.
Are you going to keep us around?
I think so. You know, you're not top drawer, but I quite like it.
Oh, you are so cheeky.
Well, OK, and we think the front pages will be dominated by Axel Rudakubana, so it's going to be another hefty hour. But I think this is an important day for Britain. This is an important day for our criminal justice system, and it's a hugely important day for ordinary working class class people in the north of England who've been so badly let down by the police, the government, social services, and indeed the Crown Prosecution Service. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Myself, Danielle Nichols, and Simon Danchuk will be with you just in a couple of moments.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Come on, Daniel.
Hello, I'm sorry, I was just writing down the phonetic pronunciation of the storm. This is hurtling towards us. Oh.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Sorry, this is a press preview. You may be listening in the morning, so it might make more sense to you. I'm Danielle, this is Andre, and we've also got a special guest in the studio, who is Simon Danchuk.
And just for those of you that are listening in the morning, obviously this has been a huge 24 hours for the United Kingdom with the Axel Rudakubana case. We're going to go through all of the front pages, but also we thought it was important to have Simon Danchuk here, as he's a former Labour MP, former MP for Rochdale, and somebody who understands the failure of the police, the failure of the Crown Prosecution Service, the failure of social services to protect young people. Admittedly, it's a different scenario, but we're keen to bring that expertise to the table this morning.
Yes, we are. What should we start with?
Well, let's go with the Daily Telegraph. Okay, well, look, Simon, it's the pictures of the three girls who were murdered by Axel Rudakubana. We face a lifetime of grief. He should face the same. Let's
say their names. It's B.B. King, Elsie Stankham and Alice De Silva.
Now, you believe he should face a lifetime of grief, but I support the death penalty. What is your justification for saying that we shouldn't seriously consider bringing back the death penalty because of this?
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons. Primarily, I think it's a greater punishment to have somebody incarcerated for a lengthy period of time, where their life will hopefully be made absolutely miserable and beyond during that time. Then there is also the possibility that you might hang or kill the wrong person, if a miscarriage of justice.
My argument against that, Simon, is always I watched Kelvin McKenzie talk about what he believed we should do, and he said DNA-proved child murder is something that the death penalty should be brought in for. I think, the issue of miscarriages of justice is significantly reduced, we assume, by DNA evidence. And the reason I say we assume that is because you don't know it's a miscarriage of justice until perhaps
However,
later.
I do still agree with Simon, as in, they don't deserve a peaceful ending. They don't deserve it.
I think it's a get out. It's an easy get out for them.
I think so.
they should wallow in the misery.
They cause other
But of course,
people,
but in America, what they try and do is both. So they say.
So that's why they're so long on death
you
row.
You are going to be put to death. So you have that hanging over you, but you have it hanging over you for 25 years.
That's interesting.
But see, I suppose the miscarriage of justice is a significant risk. Where does, I know we touched on this earlier, but where does the community go from here? Southport has been really ripped in half in terms of, there's been riots there. I don't buy into this far right thugs thing simply because it's a Labour constituency, and this a council estate that's complaining about the lack of support from police. Keir Starmer has pledged to do more with social services and the Prevent programme, but uncontrolled immigration also plays a part, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you talk about Starmer there. He's announced that there's going to be an inquiry. Whilst I welcome an investigation into what happened here, it can't be. I think we have to change the nature of inquiries in this country. It's like going back decades, the way in which they're conducted. Whether it's the child abuse inquiry that we did have under Professor Jay, that looked into historical child abuse, that reported a couple of years ago, or other inquiries, the one that's in COVID. How long is that going on for? How much is being spent?
Oh, they've dragged it out, haven't they?
They always do, because this is what politicians call kicking it into the long grass. And they can't do that with it. We need a new kind of inquiry, short, sharp, effective. Many other countries can do that.
Yeah.
But why can't we?
But all they're going to do, I can predict the end of this public inquiry. The findings will be that Prevent should work more closely with MI5. Yeah. That will be it. There will be no question about what you talked about, which is that there is a machete culture in parts of Africa, and we have uncontrolled immigration from those parts of Africa.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It won't address those issues. And what it also won't do is identify those senior staff, public servants, who are culpable, will it? They never do. And that's what the people are so unhappy about, whether it's this instance or the rape gangs that we've talked about previously.
Yes.
They want to know who is responsible, who in Prevent is not focused on this person. Why can he be carrying a knife into school on 10 occasions and no senior public servant acts on that? Is that really the sort of society community we live in?
Of course, the other thing is we've got this situation which I mentioned previously, where if you don't force your child to go to school, you can be fined. But if your child
take them on holiday,
if your child goes to school with a knife, whoopee-doo, nobody seems to be remotely bothered.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's time to start considering tightening up what criminal.
It's these kind of silly decisions that make people so angry.
Absolutely.
It's when you're fining parents and accusing them of breaking the law for going on a 2-week holiday, and yet, as you say, allowing knife crime. And
that's a really good point.
This is what pushes people. It's so stupid.
If Axel Rudakubana was determined to carry a knife into school and the parents stopped him from going on that basis, ironically, they'd be fined for truancy.
Yeah.
And now, I'll tell you one thing I'm going to say, this could be controversial or not, doesn't bother me. I don't believe a child can be that bad unless the parents are at least failures, if not malicious.
Well, there's no doubt about it that the parents in this instance have...
Now, by the way, you can fail as a parent for multiple reasons. That your child might have been subject to some form of abuse you're unaware of or whatever, but the parents must be at least failures.
The questions have to be asked.
Yes.
And this inquiry has to look at that. It shouldn't just look at the state, as Keir Starmer calls it, and public services. It should look, did the family, did the parents fail?
And the school.
Yeah, and the school, and identify people. We need a new kind of inquiry in this country to satisfy people.
We've got a parent. Let me show you up. But we have a parent in the case of Axel Rudakubana's father, who finds his son with a knife, about to launch a knife attack on the school, pulls him out of the taxi and begs the taxi driver not to take him on the grounds he's going to commit a heinous knife attack. Now, But, you know, how is that? How has that not ended up in Axel Rudakubana being in prison? Presumably because Dad didn't bother telling the police.
Well, or Dad took all the steps that he could have taken and still was ignored. But we need to find out. We need to know.
Yes.
And I suspect it won't be the inquiry and it won't be the police that give us the answers to this. It'll probably be the media doing some good investigative work. And that's how we'll find out eventually.
And it shouldn't really. They should be responsible.
This isn't the only front page story, though. What about 100-mile-an-hour winds will shut schools and also halt wind turbines? So just to be clear, wind turbines, I mean, hugely damaging to the environment, wind turbines. It's not a green technology, it's a green subsidy technology, which is two different things. But they have to turn them off during very high winds because they can become extremely, extremely dangerous. They whiz so fast, the bolts come out and they start flying everywhere.
Yes, the storm Eowyn is on its way. I don't know if you reported on this on top, but my dad had no
Well, we didn't report
water.
what your dad was doing.
No, Conway had no water for nearly 3 days.
I was going to say, Danielle...
Because of storm damage. This is what I'm saying. It's already... We're not quite recovered, are we?
I thought Danielle was about to say...
Do you know about my dad?
Why was did talk reports Danielle Nichols' dad was without water today in one of the most disastrous situations in Conway's history. We go live. Yes, that's right. We're at the Nichols house.
All right.
4.5 million people apparently are at risk of their public services going over. It's an awful thing to say.
100-mile-an-hour winds,
but we're normally very lucky in the northwest, aren't we? Because Ireland is a big wind break, but it's not going to help on this occasion.
No, it looks like it's going to be absolutely atrocious. I'm supposed to be driving down to Devon for a few days tomorrow. Goodness.
Yeah, it's Scotland and the north of England.
Oh, is it? So I'll be all right in Devon.
Okay.
You might be okay, I think. I think so.
What about this one? Donald Trump spoke at the World Economic Forum today, but also he's been talking to President Xi of China to help end the Ukraine war. Now, I think it's going to be a controversial thing, but I think that what Donald Trump will want to do is cut off the military supply to Ukraine, and get China to cut off everything to Russia, who are reeling anyway, and then say the parts that Russia has taken it can keep, but no more. At which point Zelensky will say, the only military reassurance I will accept is membership of the EU and NATO, which I think they could provide. Question mark, is that the way forward?
Well, I welcome what Donald Trump's saying. I think it's a breath of fresh air.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the front of The Guardian there on a similar point. Their headline is "Shock as Trump halts civil rights cases." The Guardian journalists will be crying into their tea over Donald Trump's winning the US, and then his speech to Davos. But he's clamping down on civil rights cases. He's put all the diversity officers across the US on gardening leave and says you're working your time out. I think it's a breath of fresh air. And this is somebody who's talking up the country. We could do with a leader in this country who's talking positively about standing up for Britain. He's standing up for America. We're going to have low taxes. We're going to get illegal immigrations out the door. We're getting rid of diversity.
He's making a lot of sense to people.
So
and I'll be honest, he's not, as he stands, he's not my cup of tea at all, but I can understand why people voted him in.
But what's happened I mean, you remain, I think, Danielle, Labour voter. You have, Simon, joined Reform UK and indeed stood for Parliament for them. But I keep making this point. Your political views have not changed. What has happened is we now have a political elite that just doesn't represent anyone other than themselves. And I look at Nigel Farage and I think to myself, people are going to watch what happens in the United States of America. And if Trump makes a success of this, and by the way, I think he will, because I think he's benefited hugely from having one term, having made mistakes, and then coming back after a 4-year break. I think they'll look at what Donald Trump's doing and vote for Farage.
I agree with you. And Davos is going on at the moment. You've got the centre parties, Keir Starmer, the Conservatives, all focused on globalisation, immigration should be welcomed, it's good for the economy, all nonsense. And the public have had enough of all that. The public, and if you look at Reform, it's Reform who get called far right. What nonsense. Reform are talking about nationalising British Steel. They're talking about nationalising energy companies. This is a some of the economic agenda is what you might call socialist.
They're exactly the same as the DUP in the respect that people forget about the DUP, that the UUP, the Ulster Unionist Party, was eliminated by the Democratic Unionist Party in Parliament. I think they still have some local councillors. But the DUP is interesting because it is fundamentally a working class movement, and it retains many of the left-wing economics that you would have naturally. And actually, the DUP is much more similar perhaps to old Labour than it is to New Labour, without any stretch of imagination. And so when you see Farage as a conservative politician, you know, with the small c, it's much more nuanced than that. It's not just left versus right.
No.
There will be things within Reform's agenda that I will see as very, very left-wing, and actually probably more appealing to you, because a lot of the so-called right-wing stuff on patriotism, you don't particularly view as right-wing anyway.
No, that's right, yeah. So conservative, traditional values, British values, we're desperately trying to hang on to them now, aren't we? Before we lose them. And that's what I think the public are beginning to buy into. And before the break, you said we'll talk about whether Reform will form the next government. I think they could well do, because people have had enough.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think, you know, this ludicrous populism thing, I think one of the things that's happened in Britain, we've become much more like Europe, where it's sort of a committee of experts. Well, actually, it's not a committee of experts, it's a committee of extremists. Because, you know, any board that you're going to sit on that has a specialist subject is going to be full of people who are obsessed with that subject. So inevitably the Board of Natural England or Natural England are obsessed with crested newts. Obviously, all of the green energy committees are dominated by people who think that climate change is the only issue that exists in the world, in the same way as a committee of educationalists will think that education solves every single problem. If your government is simply just divided up amongst extremists, all fighting for their hobby horse cases, nothing gets done. The denigration of Parliament's been horrendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And Danielle touched upon this earlier. We don't want a Prime Minister that's a lawyer and loyally and following the law. No. And we've given away Chagos Islands because that's the legally right thing to do, or whatever it might be. We want somebody who's going to speak up for Britain. We want somebody with some vision. And that Farage delivers a lot of that, I have to say.
Look, he's not my cup of tea. However, when I met him, he was very charming. But I think that the point that he brings across is that he's, like him or lump him, he will say what he thinks, and he will have
what do you think he liked about you? What do you think he liked about you, Daniel?
I don't know. Everyone is absolutely terrified, though, nowadays, to have an opinion on anything.
Yeah, but it's changing, isn't it? We feel more comfortable now, though. In very recent times, people are talking out more than ever.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think they're beginning to. Yeah, absolutely. Not least because there's more shows like this.
Yes.
You know, there's a wider media going on.
I think that's right.
Social media, and so people just don't buy into this managed media like we used to have under Blair. And you see this, some of this, if you look at how, and this tragic murder has been an example where Starmer is trying to manage it like the late 1990s, early 2000s in a Blairite sort of way, trying to manage the media, trying to use certain language. The public don't buy it anymore.
No.
They don't buy it.
You can't take us for a fool anymore.
Exactly.
I know.
Okay, this is the press preview on Talk. I'm Andre Walker. I've got Danielle Nichols and Simon Danchuk, and I think we'll be back in a moment with The Independent, and we'll also give you the Daily Mail just to make you feel a bit better. Back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Danielle Nichols. And because of this important 24 hours, we brought in Simon Danchuk. He's a former Labour MP for Rochdale and somebody who's got a huge knowledge on the way that police and social services and indeed the Prevent programme have let down communities right across Northern England, simply because we've been so led on this story about Axel Rudakubana.
It's dominating our front pages, as well it should. The Daily Express has said, cruel and pure evil, the act of a coward. We are going to the phone lines now, though. It's Hassan in Cambridge. Hi, Hassan, you're through to Talk.
Yes, hello, hi. I wanted to talk about the burqa, but since Simon Danchuk is online, I would love to ask him.
Shall I give you an answer to that?
No, don't bother,
respond.
Don't bother giving an answer. The reason why right. I'll tell you what, we're just going to move on.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Hassan in Cambridge, for that lovely contribution. Do you know what the best bit? Do you know what the best bit is about this? I hate it when you're at home thinking, what was it that he said?
That's live TV.
Yes, indeed. I'll tell you what, I used to love the fact that Going Live didn't have a dump button. I think they asked the Pet Shop Boys which one of them had been circumcised. Anyway, right. So let's go back to this. I think this is a really interesting thing, and this is the front page of the Independent.
Yeah.
Okay. As the Southport killer is sentenced to a minimum of 52 years on a harrowing and chaotic day in court, the anguish of the families caught up in the horror is summed up by a 14-year-old survivor who asks him, give me a reason for what you did. And unfortunately, the reason appears to be that he really enjoys violence and wants to kill some children and took some significant pleasure in doing it. And his principal sadness and regret was he didn't kill more of them. Is that a fair summary, Danielle?
Yes. He was absent from the docks, wasn't he, as his sentence was read out, having been removed for shouting.
He was shouting that he was ill. I personally think that and look, people are going to complain about this. I would personally just have force-fed him and stuck him upstairs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
I don't care what he thinks or what his human rights are.
Yeah.
I
don't think he should have anything to say.
And don't let him wear a mask in the court as well.
No.
To let him hide his face.
Well, why have they allowed him to wear the
because
mask?
that's what we do. Do you remember what was his name? Captain Hook. That Islamic fundamentalist,
yes. Yeah.
Abu Hamza.
Yeah.
Abu Hamza. I'll tell you what. When he was extradited to the United States of America, first thing they did was add those hooks off him. Right now, apparently what they've done is they've gaffer taped spoons to his stumps.
Really?
And apparently he's extremely upset about it. Well, this was
Have they not realised though that this kind of thing is what's upsetting people about the?
Oh yes, absolutely.
It isn't rocket science.
No. Well, it's like the perpetrator has rights as well. I mean, it's just ridiculous mentality that whether it's the police and it comes from a high level. The frontline police officers wouldn't be doing this, but it comes from a high level, and we have to think less about the perpetrator and more about the victim.
Do you know what I'd have done? Honestly, he sat there shouting, just chain him to the chair and gag him.
Absolutely. I would not be against that. And the reason he kept interrupting, I believe, is because he didn't want to hear the justice that was being meted out against him.
That was said. Actually, that and I think one of the fathers did call him a coward in the court. The sense in the court, rightly or wrongly, was that he didn't want to hear the witness, the victim impact statements, and in fact was hiding in his cell. So he didn't want to humanise the people that he killed.
Yes.
Which is a remarkable act of cowardice, actually.
Yeah.
But also was deeply upsetting to the families, and as I say, I'd have chained him to the chair.
And when they were taking him out, I think it was one of the parents that shouted out from the gallery, "You're a coward."
It was, it was one of the fathers.
It was awful.
The problem is, what's awful about this? You've got 4 children. You've got 4, but obviously you lost a 5th. Yeah. I mean, this idea of the fact that he's delighted your child's dead and fundamentally has enjoyed the day out in terms of the attack itself. That's horrifying. How do you get over that?
And what you're seeing on the front of the Independent here is some of the photos of him going to commit the murders. I mean, that we haven't seen it in any of the other papers, I don't think. But there's one of him in a taxi, one of him outside the centre where he went in and committed the murders. I mean, it's truly awful.
I mean, and also another thing that is really worth pointing out to us that Keir Starmer has now admitted he's a terrorist, and we've talked about how he was obsessed with Hitler and Gerry Adams, the IRA, the Nazis and all this. No mention of Al-Qaeda, even though he downloaded the training manual, and no mention of whether he had any support for Osama bin Laden. Clearly, deliberately not going to mention that, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a lot more to come out, isn't there? There's no doubt about that, and which I'm sure... It's interesting, we were making the point, we haven't got the Daily Mail's front page. I wonder what story they've got in the next,
just to explain,
yes.
For our viewers and listeners, what sometimes happens, in fact quite often happens, is so that newspapers can't steal ideas off each other, a newspaper that's got a remarkable exclusive will delay their front page being given to journalists. Also, sometimes they've made a mistake and they've just cocked things up. But interesting, the Daily Mail have kept back their front page today.
And just to say, the Metro, I think it's quite beautiful what's on the front, because it's not a picture of him. It's a picture of these 3 little girls, and it says, "Honour them. We will carry her love, positivity, and her legacy forward, no matter how much pain you have caused." That's from Elsie's mum.
We've brought Danielle Nichols in specially because she lost a daughter not to criminality but to meningitis. I mean, how does it feel for you as a mother who feels, presumably, that you've lost the most precious thing in your life, and then to feel that no matter how upset and angry and how much you blame yourself, an illness is an illness. These little girls are dead because somebody wanted them to die.
Yeah, and that's awful. And he's destroyed these families. He's destroyed anybody who's ever loved these children that have seen these atrocities and the fear that they will live with. It's not. I mean, it's enough for one child to die, but the truth is, everybody who was in that room, I know there was a guy who was who was a fireman, off-duty fireman, I think, and he went in as like a hero and helped. But all these people, it will affect them for the rest of their lives. And I think that, people need to be able to talk, and they need to be able to talk about it.
Well, they'll only be able to talk if Keir Starmer ceases to be the Prime Minister. But anyway, Heather is in Gavan. Heather, you want to talk?
What happens to a disease? This is a start of a disease with this Axel. How many more cases are there going to be like Axel in the near distant future?
Yeah.
We need to start looking into this seriously.
I feel exactly the same, Heather. We can't change it.
Daniel, can you let me speak? This is the start of another vicious cycle going to happen. It's like the grooming gang, this vicious cycle with that. It's like with Sarah Sharif, who died with abuse from the parents. Everything has got a vicious cycle, and all this is multitude, and it's getting bigger and bolder because this government, I mean, how would these Home Office people like that Cooper, I wish she was there at the scene of where those girls were killed to see what really happened.
Heather, can I put this to Simon Danchuk? Because Heather is one person, but I think what she says is symptomatic of people who feel like nobody cares. Now, I personally will say, I've worked in Parliament, you've been a member of Parliament. There are a great many caring people there, but people feel like, well, Axel Rudakubana killed these kids, but the real villains are the people who are angry about it. They're the ones that the police arrived with riot gear to stop. Had they arrived at Axel Rudakubana's house with a tenth of the police that they dispatched to Southport, something would have been done. But actually, it's more important to shut up the, quote, far-right thugs than it is to shut up the people that want to destroy our communities.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? And that's how people see it, and Heather's reflecting that. And there is pressure on parliamentarians to go along with, well, you know, it's I keep saying it, but it's what Starmer has said, you know, that there are problems with the state. Well, we need to get to the root causes of it. Heather's right. Supposing this happens again in the next few weeks, if there's another attack.
But you say it will happen again, and the reason, not necessarily with little girls, but that we have imported a machete culture and a knife culture. Now, fundamentally, I mean, I'll tell you a great story.
Look, it's getting out of control.
Well, let me tell you a great story, which I think is quite interesting. There was a case of a chap who attempted an insurance fraud in New York, and what he did was he bought a load of diamonds and he said he was going to sell them in New York, and he got robbed in his hotel room. The NYPD knew it was an inside job for the following reason. Because he said, I was threatened with a baseball bat. And the NYPD said, nobody in America, in New York, steals diamonds by threatening you with a baseball bat. And what had happened was, there is a culture of threatening people with a baseball bat in London to rob them. There is a culture of robbing somebody in America with a gun. There is a culture of machete attacks in Rwanda. And the point I'm making is that it's not racist to admit that different countries and different cultures have a propensity towards different types of crime. Therefore, importing people from a knife crime culture will create a knife crime culture in Britain.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And that's exactly what we've done. And we were talking earlier about an inquiry. It needs to be a short, sharp, effective inquiry, and it has to concentrate on issues like that. It can't just be talking about social work and interventions and youth clubs and everything else. It has to get to the root causes. Now
we've received a question from Greg, which I'm slightly going to expand on, because I think it will be seen as a serious comment, though will sound silly to the powers that be. Just a thought, maybe people like Simon should co-chair inquiries instead of one person, then it won't take years. And I think the point he's driving at is this. Why is it just the legal fraternity? Why not people who've been representatives of the people going in there? Former MPs, members of the House of Lords, people that have experience that goes beyond the pure legality of all of this.
Yeah, well, I do think we have an unhealthy culture of over-legalising politics, in actual fact. And so we have the judiciary making political decisions.
Yes.
You know, so I completely take this point on board. I'm not saying I'm the best person to chair this type of inquiry.
But we have created, I'm going to go back to Heather in a second, we have created a situation where huge numbers of political issues are dealt with by lawyers. I think that's denigrated the courts, by the way. But for me, you know, you could have somebody like, say as an example, I don't know, Nick Clegg, as the head of the inquiry, somebody who's been a member of Parliament in Northern England, who is beyond reproach in terms of his ministerial career. Not my flavour of person, because he's probably more pro-immigration, but at least you would have somebody that the public could trust.
Yeah, no, I think we should look at doing inquiries very differently to what we've done before. What's gone on before is just not working.
No.
And it doesn't satisfy the public. It certainly doesn't.
The bloody Sunday inquiry, they spent £100 million, and then when every single person came up and said the IRA started shooting first, I don't think they even bothered publishing it.
Yeah, no.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, no, because it's often, the call for an inquiry is often a political act.
Yes.
It's about kicking the can down the road, about not getting to conclusions.
Yeah.
That's not what Heather wants. She wants some quick lessons, genuine, real lessons that stop this happening in short time.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to Heather. Heather, does that make sense to you? What's your view?
Well, my view is these inquiries, it doesn't matter how many inquiries they have on every single issue, there will be never, ever in this godforsaken country, there will be never no lessons going to be learned about this. We need some real action and decisive action, because we are getting sick and tired of these inquiries and everything about these inquiries, whether it's Axel or any other inquiries. We are absolutely fed up to stick to our back teeth.
Well, let me say this as an example. The Grenfell inquiry, said that there were far too many organisations with far too many different remits, and it was far too confusing who was in charge of the regulations, because there were too many quangos, all doing slightly different but similar related things, and its recommendation was to create a new quango dealing with this issue.
Yeah, you can believe it. Well, on that issue, there's just been a criticism of the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, over setting up a value for money quango, and the committee that's investigated it said it's of no value whatsoever. It's just a total waste of money. It's no defined role.
The irony.
What the irony on it.
But I mean, the Grenfell being the most recent, I think, public inquiry is amazing, because what amazed me about Grenfell was that you looked at this and they said, what we need is more fire inspectors. Well, hang on a second. Was the thing inspected for fire or not? Yes, it was. So the fire inspectors are terrible. So why don't we just sack them? Let's at least start with sacking them. Because what will happen is somebody in the Prevent programme who has manifestly failed will get a big promotion out of this and a new big budget. Because he'll just say we did our best.
Yeah,
we did our best is the byword of public services nowadays.
Oh, absolutely, and we saw that in some of the rape gang incidents in Rotherham and elsewhere, where senior officers from the local authority, they didn't lose the pensions or anything like that. No. They went on to promotions and work elsewhere.
Oh, I'll tell you what I'd have done with the post office. I'd have, and people are going to get upset with this, the Post Office Workers' Pension Fund. That's what would have paid the compensation to Alan Bates and others. They wouldn't have liked that, but I don't care. Anyway, Heather, I'm asked to ask you about the storm. Are you worried?
Well, I've been looking at this. It's down to the politicians of both Conservative and Labour. They have consistently failed abundantly on this country for far too long.
Heather, when I said Heather, when I asked you about the storm, I didn't mean the political storm over Axel Rudakubana.
You meant the actual storm AOing.
Well, this storm is brewing in this country. It's absolutely getting out of hand.
There you go.
Tell you what, with the politicians of both Conservatives and Labour have consistently failed in this country and the people.
Heather, is your house about to get blown over because you're near?
You do need to know that there is a storm coming where you are.
Yeah, I've just got a light on my phone.
So you're all right, okay.
It's a red alert for storm.
Oh, good. So you have been warned. That's okay. That's okay.
Heather, thank you so much.
I hope you are okay.
And I will tell you one thing. That is the best misunderstanding we have ever had on the show. We'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to Talk. I'm Danielle, this is Andre. We're here with you. Well, I'm here for a little bit longer. And with the lovely Simon Danchuk as well. Thank you very much for joining us. We've been going through the papers. And we do have to warn you about the storm. Alongside, obviously, the terrible atrocities that happened in Stockport. That's kind of... Southport, taking up the front pages, is also the storm that's coming as well. We've got...
Yeah, okay.
UK should be braced for 100-mile-per-hour winds. Millions of people have already received an emergency phone alert. And from my own little bit of research, it says that there's a chance of tornadoes between London and Bristol.
The gallery has made a joke, which I was about to make a joke myself, that I'm going to an Indian restaurant tonight. Okay, so
we've also got Jamelia Jamil, who I follow, by the way, on
who is Jamelia Jamil?
She used to be a TV presenter, model.
Is she Claudia Winkleman just pretending?
No. She's an actress now. But she said that not becoming a mother is one of the best decisions I've ever made,
and for her future kids as well.
Well, she doesn't want to be a parent. Yeah.
I think this is really, really sad, though. And I've spoke about this a lot. I think that, particularly now, she doesn't actually live in the UK now, as far as I'm aware. I think she lives in America. But I think it's very much discouraged to have children. I know a lot of people have 2 children, and it's such so difficult to keep a good standard of living, and that they're like, I can only afford to have 2. And these are people who I know are on really, really good wages and doing really good jobs, and they still can only afford to have 2.
We need to have more kids, though, don't we?
I know,
We're being
that's
told
what I
to have more. I'm trying my best, but we need to have more children, not fewer children.
There's only me and you that are having
working
party
at
So look. Without being funny, you're going to have kids with wife number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the...
Is that the plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have more children?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
yeah.
We've
God
I'm
willing.
done here, man. I'm done.
You might ask you to be a godparent.
No.
You're not going to believe who I'm adding to my list of people who are my godchildren.
Go on.
This is unguessable.
Yeah.
His name is Maya Tuzi. Is becoming my godson.
Oh, really?
On the 19th of April.
He's becoming your godson?
Yeah, because he's been baptised, is he?
Been baptised a Catholic on the 19th of April. And so he decided he needed. It's not called a godfather, it's called a sponsor. But I'm going to refer to myself as Maya Tuzi's godfather, which is happening on the 19th of April.
Does he know what he's letting himself in for?
Well, Stephen Mulhern is actually godparent to 2 of my kids, weirdly, yeah.
Because what people do is they pick the most important one, don't they?
They do.
It's why Adolf Hitler had about 5,000. But are you not worried, though? Because there doesn't seem to be much of opportunities for young people nowadays.
Well, in terms of bringing them up, well, if you bring them up as best you can and in the right way, then they'll make their own way in life, won't you? You just give them the opportunities that you can, don't you? Yeah. I think they can enjoy life. There's still lots to do.
But I can see. I think it's just a little bit sad that because I think
but mums are being discouraged.
Yeah, but the weird thing about becoming a mum is, and that I realised was that it was less painful. Because I had a problem conceiving our last child, and we went through a lot of miscarriages, and it was
horrendous.
It wasn't a very pleasant journey. But I realised that the fact that I kind of knew what I was missing made it more painful, as opposed to if it was my first and I didn't know what joy motherhood brought. And so I think that because it's that old scenario of there's never a good time to have a baby, and so sometimes it's just, you've just got to. My mum always said this, like, there'll never be a good time. If you see babies in your future, then get on with it.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think, unless you've had a child, you don't realise, and I never realised until I'd had a child, how amazing it is.
I know.
You can have all the money in the world,
I know.
but there's nothing
the
quite
love,
like
yeah,
of
the
having a
love
child.
that you have for your child is just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that feeling when you hold them in your arms, and I think obviously people when they have their first baby, you kind of take it for granted when you get to the second because you know it's going to come. But like that first baby, you just can't you can't quite understand how you could love something and someone as much as you love your child.
Yeah.
And but I also do very much understand why she would make that decision because I don't think it's encouraged. I think it's positively discouraged.
We live in a country where the good people are the enemy, and I think that she can. I think she's correctly identifying. I mean, you lived in Saudi Arabia. And you said that for all of Saudi Arabia's failings, they loved the fact you had a family. They were very supportive of it. If you went to a restaurant with a load of kids, they were delighted.
Oh, it was so strange because I'm used to. You must feel the same. I'm used to rocking up and getting. Can we have a table for 6 and getting that? Oh, or getting on the plane and we always make a joke like, sorry, we're sat at the row in front or we're sat at the row behind. Like, we always make a joke, but it's very much like, oh, it's a big fat inconvenience. Whereas when we went to Saudi, it was like they gave us the best table right in the window and to the point of being annoying. They're so sweet with the kids. Oh, do you want an apple juice? Oh, you've spilled that. And sometimes they're being little rascals and they want a good sharp telling off. But they'll be like, oh, it's fine. I don't want that straw. Can I have a different cup? No, nothing is too big a problem for them. It's very much celebrated, and I think that was one of the things that I could see was a massive difference.
And I think Britain used to be like that at one time. Family used to be celebrated. I think we need to get back to that. We were talking about traditions. Yeah, I think so. My wife is from Rwanda. Family is everything in Rwanda. Family coming together.
What's her impression of the denigration of the family and the denigration of Christian culture in Britain?
Oh well, she finds it very unusual in terms of the roles of men and women in Britain, completely different to what she knows. And she's not the sort of woman that's under the thumb or anything. No. Far from it. She'd tell me exactly what she thought. But at the same time, she's quite traditional in terms of roles of men and women and
I've been a stay-at-home mum for 15 years, so I have completely played that role traditionally. So I know exactly what you mean, which is strange because I do consider myself a bit of a feminist, but maybe not.
But I remember when you were talking about moving house and there was things like, oh, I'm sorry, there has to be a wholly separate kitchen because that's inconvenient for me because kids will be grabbing pots and things like that when they come along. So the point is, she expects to get what she expects to get, your wife. But she equally says that people need to be in their correct roles in life.
Yeah, no, that's right, and that's how she sees it, and that's how she's been brought up, and she buys into that. I tell you, one aspect is really interesting. Their family, if somebody's getting married or there's something significant happening, then they have like team meetings where the whole extended family come together for a proper sit-down meeting where everybody discusses how much they're going to give and how they're going to plan the wedding and who's going to take what role and responsibility. Yeah, totally.
And you show your children that. It's strange you should say that because we have what are called family meetings and all the kids go, oh, what's happened, what have we done wrong? But we come exactly like that. We all come together
really to
say, look, you're not pulling your weight, or this needs to be done more, and just little reminders without picking on them, but just saying, that's out of order. Can you try to be a bit more, how do you feel? Is there anything you want from us? It's a two-way conversation. So if they see that with their elders, they learn that.
Absolutely. I think the interesting story next to Jamila there on the iPaper is, and it's related, it's another story about family, and the title is "For the Love of Dogs, we're gentle parenting our pets. No wonder they need it." I mean, this is the reverse of what we're talking
pets
about.
Now are getting anxiety and things like that.
But here's the amazing thing: you've got the front page of a national newspaper that lays out the reason why you shouldn't have children next to an article about the reasons why you should buy a dog.
Yeah, I know. This is the society in which we live. This is where Britain's at.
Look, I think
it's totally wrong.
I think we've gone a little bit mad, and strangely we saw Dean and I funnily had this conversation a couple of days ago. We went for a walk and there was a guy with his dogs and it was incredible, and Dean said, I think people have just replaced children with dogs.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely...
But you used to see that, if you remember, Danielle. So a couple who'd get together and perhaps they'd get married, and then initially they'd buy a dog. Yeah. And they'd look after the dog.
That's what we did.
And
we bought a dog first because Dean wanted a baby and wouldn't stop hounding me, and I wasn't ready, so I bought him a dog.
But now they don't move on from the dog. They just keep dogs there, and they have little dogs. They're like dog babies or whatever.
I've had a friend of mine who just every time she got clucky, he just bought a new animal. In the end, it was like Chester Zoo.
Menagerie.
Crazy. Okay, we'll be back in a moment with the press preview.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, this is Talk with Andre Walker and Danielle Nichols and indeed Simon Danchuk. Okay, well, look, we're taking your calls about Axel Rudakubana, 0344 499 1000. Let's go to the phones. Steve is in Walsall. Steve, you're on Talk.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Like I've said to you before, Andre, I was born in 1947. Obviously, I'm 77 years of age now. I've still got all my faculties, and I'm a very clever man. And I have lived through the years when this country was a beautiful place to live. And over the years, it's gone down and down and down. It's a wild country now.
And we've had a debate on this show before about Walsall, which people have variously described as a dump, and also people have also said that back in the day it was absolutely fantastic. But what's happened is uncontrolled immigration and poverty and deindustrialisation have all come together to make the place really at its lowest ebb in its history.
Yes, but not only that. I mean, what's happened with them young girls? I mean, it's really upset me. It takes a lot to upset me, and it's really upset me.
You mean the grooming gangs?
There was that young lad the other day got stabbed. There was another one last week got stabbed. When's it going to all end?
I know, Steve. I know.
Somebody needs to come down with the wrath of Hades on this lot.
Yeah, they need to realise there's a huge problem.
But do you, Steve, do you support the death penalty? I mean, I've said on my YouTube channel, which you can find at YouTube, Andre Walker, I've said that it's time to have him put down.
When Rose Ellis got hung, and then the band hanging, and I thought to myself at the time, now we're for it.
Remember something, Steve, at the time they said that every single person who would have received the death penalty will be in prison for life and that they will never come out. That is, I think now it's fair to say that never happens at all.
It never happened at all. I mean,
this man should never come out of jail.
People of this country have been led right up the garden path for years now, and it's like Simon says, we need a Donald Trump in this country.
Yeah.
He's going to do it and say it as he sees it, instead of all this pussyfooting about. I mean, I'll give up with it, but I'll tell you one thing about this chap. He's going to go to prison. This is nothing to be proud of, really, but I know a man, his brother's in prison, and he's been told by his brother they are waiting. If that chap ends up in their prison, he's a walking dead man.
Yeah.
So let me just be clear that
the prison grapevine in the country, every man in every prison in this country, basically, they're waiting for him to go into their prison, and he's a walking dead.
Well, let me say, Steve, what a great shame. Simon, do you want to lament that fact at all? No?
No. I think Steve's talking a lot of sense, and I think that's what's awaiting this guy.
I'll tell you one thing. Axel Rudakubana will undoubtedly attempt violence in prison. I can't wait to see him pick on someone his own size.
Well, there's another thing. I mean, that chap what went running around in London with a knife on, is it Tower Bridge or Westminster Bridge?
Tower Bridge. No, actually, it was London Bridge.
London Bridge. Now, he was in a top security prison. They decided to put him in a lower security prison. Then after a bit, they said, oh, he's a nice man now, he's a lovely boy, we can let him free. They let him out, look what he did.
Yeah.
What are these people who are making these decisions to loose these people out of jail? Who are they? What's their names?
Yeah. Well, no. Well, remember the byline now for all of our public services is, well, they tried hard. So the fact that this Axel Rudakubana should have been in prison anyway, well, they did their best, didn't they? And that's good enough for a country where public spending is out of control.
There's something else. As I said earlier on about inquiries, they had an inquiry to what was going on with sex grooming in around the Bradford area, and it's happened. It's roused its head again, and somebody else said we want an inquiry. Starmer said, "Oh, there's no need to have an inquiry. We've already had an inquiry. It'll upset the findings of the first inquiry if we have another one." What's the point in all these inquiries?
I know.
It's madness.
It is madness.
I'm intelligent. I'm having my intelligence insulted by all the rubbish what's coming out.
And that's what makes people so very, very angry.
Let me put that to Simon because Steve, thank you. Give us a second. That's what upsets people, isn't it? The way they're being told that this isn't happening. They said, we believe that part of the problem here is uncontrolled immigration. We do not believe an uncontrolled knife attack would be committed by somebody who is a long-standing family within our community, and they were told he's a choir boy who went to school, went to church. Similarly, what about this? Is he practicing Islam in prison? Well, we're not willing to say that. He was a big supporter of Gerry Adams and Adolf Hitler. Yes, but what did he think of Osama bin Laden, given he downloaded the Al-Qaeda training manual?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the people are frustrated doesn't really catch it,
They think we're idiots, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Treat us like we're idiots.
And so Starmer, the Prime Minister, doesn't mention immigration. There's questions to be asked about immigration, whether it's importing machete culture.
You can't just avoid the subject.
Can't avoid the subject.
Just in case you tread
on
some
what you're actually saying is, you're saying, if you think this is related to immigration, that there is now machete culture imported from Africa, you are far right.
Yeah, no, that would be his answer, and that's what he said around the time that these awful murders took place, isn't it? You know, as though the wider public had some responsibility for what had gone on. I mean, it's perverse. I think his attitude to this is wrong.
Do you actually care when people accuse you of being far right? Because I no longer do. Because ultimately, what does it mean? It means somebody who disagrees with uncontrolled immigration. And what?
Oh, yeah. I think that's a really interesting point, actually. And Labour politicians are famous for this, for using that label of far right.
Yeah.
To the point they were even calling Boris Johnson far right.
Yeah.
Nobody believes this nonsense. I mean, Boris Johnson, the most left-wing Prime Minister we've had in many years. So the label that they try to give people, I think it emboldens politicians, whether they Reform or even in the Conservative Party, to be more just about what they're calling for. We're listening to Steve here. He's exactly right what he's saying. You know, people have had enough.
Well, OK, so I want to thank both Danielle Nichols and Simon Danchuk. You're running around presumably from TV studio to TV studio because you're specialist knowledge in these sorts of areas. I will be taking some calls on Thursday night, but also we're on to Mike Graham right now, if you're working in the morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, let's just get straight into the show. Let's go for Jasmine, the Teenage Witch. She's in Manchester. Yasmin, the Teenage Witch.
Hiya, darling.
Hello. Here we go.
Everybody on the panel.
They've all gone. It's just me now.
Is it just you,
It's just
Andre?
me.
Right, OK.
I'll put both ears in for you.
Love to Danielle as well. What would you like to know, Andre? Do you want to know some things to do for January?
OK, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm getting a word. Right, no, I'm joking. Why don't you tell me what your predictions are for my future, Yasmin?
OK, let me have a look. Right.
Sorry, Yasmin, just to explain, what are you actually doing right now? Are you doing tarot cards?
No, I'm looking at my gypsy witch, and she's a gypsy.
OK.
And it's a doll.
I believe we're not allowed to use that word anymore, but OK, fair enough.
All right.
It's your traveller witch.
I've got a doll.
Right.
And she's a gypsy.
Right.
And
it's
I
traveller.
I'm getting the messages through her.
So the doll is live, is she?
You're going on a journey. Right. You're going up on a train. You're going up to Scotland. That's going to be significant.
Unlikely.
I've got 8 around it, so it could be 8 days, 8 weeks, but it's going to be significant. I feel as though, even though you're on YouTube and you do your show, Walker Andre show on YouTube, I feel as though you're going to do another show, the show in May. There's another business that you're going to be doing, which is going to be really significant, a bit more political, but really significant, interviewing famous people. That's coming up in the new year. I also feel around you, I still see the mountain with your linen trousers, darling.
Why would I wear linen trousers?
I don't know. I just see it. I can't change it. I still see the
Let's
linen
get rid of this
trousers.
chair. Look at
I still
that.
see the Jeep. I still see you with 4 other people.
Linen trousers.
I'm telling you.
She was meant to go. No, for consistency purposes.
In them and all.
Danielle, do you not understand? You don't exist when you've gone off air, right? Can't come back.
Tell Danielle to come back a minute.
Oh, see.
Yeah, but you can't hear it, can you?
She's got a prediction for me. I know she has.
Right, Danielle, the first thing I
hear him.
thought, I know it sounds crazy, but I saw you building a swimming
I'm going to have to go
pool
outside because I
somewhere.
can't hear you.
You're building a swimming pool. Tell her, Andre.
She says Danielle's going to get a swimming pool.
Yeah, there's something about outside of a building, a swimming pool, something like that's going to be happening for her. I also feel around her as though she's talking to, a media mogul man.
Sorry, the moguls were an empire. Mogul is...
Mogul, whatever it is. A media mogul, and he's doing something with her, and it's going to be really significant. I see the newspapers headlines.
Harvey Weinstein.
I also feel that there's a B initial, a male around her, that is going to be, weird. BP, but I know it's not British Petroleum, but BP initials around her with a male.
Could be Lord Baden-Powell.
Feel she's having a significant celebration this year that's going to bring in. Danielle, I still see the yacht. The yacht's there. I still see it, and it's big. It's big.
It's a ship called Dignity.
She's going round some either Greek islands or island hopping. They're saying island hopping. I also feel, when I'm looking at her energy, as though she's got 3 projects starting on the go, 3 projects on the go. And Andre, she's been like a breath of fresh air on TV tonight, and she looks fabulous. Don't she look out?
Well, look, we love.
She's got thank you. There is something to a lot of what you said. The media mogul, you said man, it is a woman. And the 3 thing is really weird because I've not worked for like 4 weeks, and then I come to London today and I've got 3 jobs.
Brilliant. But listen, I've just seen you on a red carpet with a woman who's very slim and she's tall, and you've got a microphone in your hand to her. So you're doing...
Julia Hartley-Brewer.
You're doing something.
Yeah, who is it? Is it Alex Gerrard by any chance at this? I'm going to do a charity football match.
Very slim. Lena Savaroni.
Listen, I know this woman is definitely wearing sparkly. I see you, Danielle, on the red carpet. You're doing media. What do you do? What do they call it when they stick the microphone?
Interview, like Dennis Pennis.
Yeah, they're doing some... Yes, very similar. But it's like she's going up a level, up the ladder. I also feel around you, Andre, you definitely need a back massage. You've not had a massage, and you haven't got your crystal cock either, and that's
what?
That crystal cock that I told you to get, it's for good luck.
I'm not buying a crystal phallus.
Maybe somebody in TV land will send you one.
Sorry, do you mean a male chicken or a penis?
Penis, Willie.
I'm not getting a crystal penis.
It's very lucky.
It's not lucky.
The Greeks love them.
Well, my dad. I'll buy one for my dad. I'm not buying my dad a crystal penis. What's he going to say? He's going to go, I'm not having that. I'm not having that. That's disgusting.
Say thank you, because
he's not.
In the culture, it's very, very.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he grew up on a council estate in Lancaster, so he's not that Greek. But I admit he was born in Athens. But
that's fabulous, so magical. I've got a goddess Athena.
Sorry. What, a council estate in Lancaster's magical?
The goddess Athena's magical.
Oh right. Well, she's not from a council estate in Lancaster, I'll tell you.
No, but she's in a council estate in Lancashire. Not a council estate, but a house in Lancashire where I am.
Oh, is she?
But I also feel for you, Andre. I see you on the cover of a book. Now, it's very strange that, and I feel it's going to be something like interviews with the good and great or something like that. It's really significant.
Well, I am writing a book at the moment, but it's at very early stages. But it's not interviewing people.
You won't write just one book in your life, love. You'll be better than Boris Johnson's books.
Well, to be fair, so's Jeffrey Archer, and that's a low standard.
Anyway, do you want to know anything else about this year?
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Why don't you say? Right, do me a favour. Why don't we make some predictions for the country? Because obviously we can't make predictions for. Hang on a second. We can make predictions for individual people. Why don't you phone up 0344 499 1000? We're going to get the Yasmin, the teenage witch, to do some predictions. Who can we put through? Who might be interested in doing that? Well, OK, I'll tell you what, well, let's do some predictions for the country then. And I'll tell you what people can do. If they want to, they can send us a message on WhatsApp and I'll explain how to do it. In fact, I'll demonstrate. All you do is you open up your phone, you open up WhatsApp, and you can see there's my list of contacts. Then you get talk 0344 499 1000. So I will open it up here, go to talk, and here's the easy thing. I just go, press this button, the green button with the microphone, go, hello, this is Andre Walker. I'm interested in talking to Andre Walker. Yasmin, can you predict what's going to happen in future in this country, perhaps over the next year?
Yeah.
Let go and it'll send.
Well, actually, it might be 18 months, but I see Keir Starmer trying to hang on by his fingertips and the bleeding, so he's leaving. I've got 18 months within the next 18 months. I also feel David Lammy is going to resign.
Oh, God, we can only hope.
I also feel that there's something going to be coming out significant to do with David Lammy in the next 6 months. Sorry.
Yeah, he's never had a proper job.
12 to 6 months. I also feel that there's going to be a massive shift to reform the whole country, more or less, because of what's coming out. It's going to be really significant. The 1st of April, around that time, there's going to be a lot of backbenchers that are going to be moving from the backbench over the other side of the red line. They're moving to the right, so they're moving. Right, now for the country, let me have a look. I feel as though there's something to do with Scotland, independence, but I feel as though that is going to be more reform as well. That's just on political.
So you're saying that potentially reform might surge in Scotland, even though it looks like they're unpopular there at the moment.
Reform is definitely going to surge in Scotland.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'll tell you what, it's going to be massive.
Right, Nikki has messaged in, and she said, "Will I ever get a date with Andre Walker?"
Darling, set your sights higher.
Oh, that is absolutely superb. OK, stick with us, Yasmin, because we've actually got Anna McGovern, who is interested. Somebody else has said.
I like Anna.
Somebody else has said, Danielle, will Yasmin predict, this is from Tony, if I'm going to wake up with a harem of blonde women who have breasts like Danielle Nichols? Don't answer that. It's undignified.
Only if his eyes blow up dolls.
OK, we've got Anna McGovern with us, and she wants to talk. She's a political commentator, and she wants to talk to Yasmin about some predictions. So, Anna, the floor is yours to talk to Yasmin, the teenage witch.
Hi, Yasmin. Do you remember me? I think we spoke before.
I have spoken to you before, darling.
Yeah. You know what? I was going to say, you made a prediction, a very specific one about, I can't remember what the date was, but you said, on this particular date, you're going to meet someone and make a new friend. I actually did. That actually happened.
Was it the 11th?
It was the 11th, yeah. I actually did make a new friend that day. Crazy.
Yeah, that's a magical number for you. I also feel around you, I see a lot of potted plants. Do you understand that? Or where you're living needs more fresh air. There's something about having fresh air, fresh plants, something about putting more greenery around you.
I live in a studio flat in the middle of a town, so not really much greenery there, to be honest.
Yeah, but you need to put it in your home, greenery in your home.
Okay, I'm gonna have to leave it there simply because I do want to say to you, and sometimes I think it is important to pull the curtain back on what we do as broadcasters. We wanted Yasmin to come on. We're really glad she did, just to lighten the load on what is a very, very serious night. But we're going to now go for a break and come back with your calls on Axel Rudakubana and the sentencing for the murder in Southport. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and I just want to show the front page of the Daily Express to absolutely everybody. It says, cruel and pure evil, the act of a coward. I just want to say to all of you about Axel Rudakubana, who killed baby Elsie and Alice. I want to endorse and congratulate and thank the parents of these young children for their dignity and their decency and their attempt to look after their daughters even after, sadly, the little angels have gone to heaven. And I think to have called Axel Rudakubana a coward was absolutely right. As you know, he was cowering in his cell, unwilling to listen to the victim impact statements. I say that the humane thing for society, I'm not bothered about Axel Rudakubana, is that he's put down. I think that any worthless animal is put down, and Axel Rudakubana is that. I believe he has made no contribution to Britain and never will. I don't want to bother paying for him to be in prison. I don't believe he'll last the full 52 years because, as has been said before, every single prison in the country has people in it that want to attack him and kill him. I'm not going to endorse any criminality because that's not my place. But believe me, I'm going to offer no objection whatsoever to any attack to him in prison because it's not against the rules for me to not criticise a criminal act. And I want the parents prosecuted. I think it's time to look at what they have done, because if you are a parent and you don't get your children to go to school every day, then you will be fined and prosecuted for truancy. But when you do not take action to prevent your child going to school with knives, no action, nothing, you don't get anything. There's no punishment whatsoever. Anna McGovern is a political commentator and she joins us. Anna, this is symptomatic of a more general decline in the country, I would say. But I do think that even though we're going to criticise the importation from Africa of knife crime culture, even though we're going to criticise the behaviour of the Merseyside police, even though we're going to criticise the CPS and Keir Starmer, I think the first thing we should always do is to say that that one of the things that makes us proud to be British is the behaviour of the families of the Southport victims.
Absolutely, and I think when we're seeing the details of this case coming out, it just keeps getting more and more horrific, especially as well the fact that he said he was actually happy that they were dead.
Yes.
And I remember reading as well, he'd spoken to a police officer and asked about the age of the youngest child he'd murdered. And when the police officer said 6 years old, he was happy about it. I believe I even read he was laughing. And I think that just shows how much of a monster he truly is.
Yep.
We're seeing lots of sentiment online as well. A lot of people who previously would never have advocated for the death penalty actually saying, well, hang on a minute, why is my taxpayer money being spent on housing this monster in prison when there might be another way? And I think that's why a lot of people are now saying, well, maybe the death penalty is justifiable in these circumstances. Because of
absolutely, absolutely. Now, look, I'm going to bring Ken in London. I'm going to say, first of all, to Ken, the following. I hope that you and your community, like my community, will be praying for these children. But as far as I'm concerned, this beast deserves to be in hell. And I believe that it is our duty, our moral duty, to send him there as quickly as possible. I would have him put to sleep tomorrow. Ken? Can we get Ken on, please, quickly? Ken, I'm sorry, we didn't hear that. Can you repeat whatever it was you saying?
I would totally agree with you, what you said there. These murders of children, this is a manifestation of demonic activity in our nation, and it's increasing exponentially. It's increasing. It's going to get worse.
So can I ask you this question? Can I ask you this question? Because we've established this before, and Anna is a Christian as well. Your central theory on this is that the reason why Christians turn the other cheek is because hatred infects and becomes infectious. But actually, whilst it's a Christian's job to turn the other cheek, it's the state's job to put Axel Rudakubana to death to ensure that hatred is removed from society. Is that roughly a fair summary?
Of course, that's a good summary, but it's a Christian's responsibility to speak up for the truth. We are duty-bound by God against all opposition to speak the truth in love, not in judgment, in love. Now, we have got a government right now, and the sad situation in the United Kingdom now is all the political parties have been taken over by wokery, which is demonic work, and LGBT ideology, and what has happened now, the devil is viciously attacking our nation. There's a spiritual realm to our life, Andre. There's a physical realm, there's a spiritual realm. And I believe it's necessary now to consider a referendum to society, because the society has been killed here, not just mainly the government people. We need to have a referendum but calling back the death penalty, especially death to children or police force.
Yeah, I have to say. Sorry, go on.
And regarding these rape gangs, any man found raping, sexually abusing children, they should be castrated physically, not chemically, physically, and they should get 15 years automatic in jail, no out till after 15 years.
Well, I've got to be honest with you. Ken, stick with us for a second. Anna McGovern, look, as far as I'm concerned, Ken has talked previously about repentance. There will be no repentance in the case of Axel Rudakubana. He is delighted, and I say just send him to hell next week.
Absolutely. And I also wonder what the response will be from the president when he actually arrives, when he's been incarcerated now, and I wonder what's going to happen then. So I think from the public point of view, people are outraged, they're so angry. And I think one point as well, which I think is really important to add, is the fact that this was being discussed over the summer and people were getting in huge trouble, I believe even imprisoned for talking about this case. So now the true details have come out, many people, like I tweeted tonight that Keir Starmer should resign. Now this has all come out, and thousands of people liked it.
Anna, can I make this point to you? So I saw a brilliant message on social media. I forget who wrote it or where it came from. And it said, during gay pride, to the police, during gay pride, you painted your vehicle with a rainbow. During Black Lives Matter, you took a knee. But when ordinary parents in Southport protested to protect their children from being attacked, what you did was sent in the riot police. That is the way that people feel right now. They feel, you know, when they see parents of children who were groomed being arrested and the perpetrators being effectively venerated by this special status where they will not be prosecuted no matter how many children they rape. Axel Rudakubana, do you know something? I say this again. Oh, I feel ill. I want to go into my cell. Chain him up, gag him, and force him to listen to it.
Absolutely. And also, isn't it interesting as well, people are prioritising ideological agendas. So when it's about Black Lives Matter, when it's about LGBT, that's absolutely fine. People are jumping on that bandwagon and waving their flags around. But when it's something as horrific as this, people were, you know, when this was all coming out, people were being villainised. People were even getting, you know, in trouble with the police and in prison.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. We had, you know, you paint the car for LGBT rights. There's no crucifix at Easter, is there? Or painted on a police car. Now, actually, I don't believe that the police should have any of these things. But what's good for goose is good for the gander. I mean, Ken, do you feel like we discriminate against ordinary, decent Christian people in this country?
Of course, it's increasing all over the world, and that's all prophesied in the Bible, Andre. But regarding Starmer, now, I'm not judging this man as a person. I'm judging him as the Prime Minister of our nation. He is the head man in our nation.
Yes.
He is going to prove to be the most dangerous, evil leader this nation has ever had. He's an atheist. He's surrendered to Islam. He's surrendered to wokery insanity. He's surrendered to immoral LGBT queer ideology. He's surrendered to them. He is paying lip service and promoting them in this nation. God's judgment will come unless he repents. This is big trouble ahead here. Big trouble's coming to our nation.
I'm going to put this to Anna McGovern for a second. I think that there is an important point that Ken makes. Now, not everybody agrees with him, and I don't expect that. But the reason is because I think the reason I like Ken is because he's standing up for traditional values in his own way. Different people will be different. But he sees the big issue here. And I don't want to put words into his mouth, is not just offing with Axel Rudakubana, which is a no-brainer, but this concern about protecting our society more generally, about saying that, you know what, if people are walking around in a thong during Gay Pride Week, that has a more general damaging effect onto the community than just people who directly see it. Similarly, you know, the fact that grooming gangs get away with it is not just damaging to the girls that get raped, but has a more general toxicity to society. I think he's right on that, Anna.
No, I absolutely agree. And then speaking about Christian values as well, I think this is just demonstrating yet again the direction this country is going in. More and more people are rejecting religion, they're rejecting Christianity, and more in favour of these ideological agendas instead. And then if you're seen to reject that, if you're seen to even question it, then all of a sudden you're this hateful person. You'll probably get locked up in prison for it if you speak out of turn as well. So I think it just,
I mean, there was a guy, remember this,
terrifying.
Is his name Peter Lynch? There is a man who died for the Stockport riots, isn't there? Who, as a result of being locked up for telling the truth about Axel Rudakubana, he ended up dead. Axel Rudakubana lives through it. And so you're then sitting there thinking that whilst one of the protesters was killed, Axel Rudakubana was not.
And it's just horrific as well. He spoke up about it. He died, and Axel still lives. There's going to be so much anger. And now the truth is coming out. Keir Starmer, I think he should be very scared right now, the position that he's in, and I think many people are going to be calling for him now to stand down.
And what about
he cannot continue?
What about this thing that we don't know the answer to? Which, and I've said it quite openly. I'm happy to say it openly, but what I have to say is it is a rumour. And just to explain to everybody what this is, all media outlets and political commentators, and I imagine you're in this boat, but if you're not, it doesn't matter, have been contacted by people purporting to have spoken to family members of the victims in Southport who say that Axel Rudakubana shouted Allah Akbar when he was killing the children. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but we've never had that addressed, have we? And what we have heard is this whole thing about him having the Al-Qaeda training manual, but we've never been told about his interest in radical Islam.
To be fair, I've heard lots of rumours coming out about this as well, and I think this will still continue to develop. Facts are coming out all of the time. I have personally been contacted about some additional details of the case.
So you're the same as everybody, because the other message that's been made, Anna, that I've received is we are furious about the fact that the police will not allow us to tell us the truth about what Axel Rudakubana did.
Yeah, and again, that's horrific. Imagine people have got these facts, and over the summer as well, people were speaking up. They were actively getting in trouble for it. People were silenced. They were scared to speak up on the truth. And then now it's all come out. They look utterly, it looks embarrassing. It's ridiculous, and they should hang their heads in shame.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to Ken in London. We'll be back in a moment with Anna McGovern.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, let's go straight to the phones. This is Andre Walker and Anna McGovern on the late phone-in. OK, Jason is in Walsall. Jason, you're on Talk.
How you doing, Andre? You all right?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I'm a bit like pointing my nails at the moment because I'm on the way up to Scotland.
Oh, God. What, with the storm?
That storm, yeah. So I'm hoping to be in and out before it actually really hits. You know what I mean?
And you're a truck driver, are you?
No, I'm driving a van. I'm in a Sprinter. Beside a Sprinter.
Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I'm just going past Lancaster at the moment.
Acaster?
Lancaster.
Lancaster?
Lancaster.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know where Lancaster is. So you're going to be heading into the Lake District in a couple of minutes. That's where you're going to, if you're going to start feeling it, you're going to start feeling it there.
Well, I'm feeling it now.
Are you?
You know what I mean? So it's absolutely throwing it down at the moment, and then normally that's when the winds just kick in. You know what I mean?
Because the problem you're going to have is once you start getting past Stranraer, the Irish windbreak will no longer be effective.
Yeah, I'm worried about. I don't know whether you've been through Carlisle to Gretna.
Yes.
And there's like an Alfred Bridge, and you've got like the estuary that runs into it.
Yes.
That is a very scary bridge when it's really windy. It's like the camber on that bridge. It leads to the right.
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. I've not been on it in a few years, so I don't remember exactly. But look, why drive tonight? Because the Met Office have said don't.
Well, it's the red alert is from 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Oh, is it right?
So if the red alert had been now, like, we wouldn't have gone up. But because it's 9, so I should be in and out before that.
Right.
But they say that it's amber warnings at 5 o'clock in the morning.
What are you what are you delivering, and where are you delivering it to?
It's mainly business materials that we deliver for contractors who do work on electric servicing, and I ain't going to mention companies' names and all that but those big companies anyway.
So they want. So when you say let's bike a document over, they're not really biked.
No, it's not really, But I'll say the stuff I've delivered up, Manny, the guys will be waiting for it in the morning, but it's ironic in a way because they probably won't be working themselves today because, a lot of the places are all been shut up in Scotland because of the weather. Which still has to be delivered, that's how we get paid, you know what I mean?
Well, sure. I mean, I imagine that you can only call off the delivery if you've got the red warning. Because otherwise the insurance won't pay out.
That's exactly.
It's exactly.
Sorry.
It's exactly the same as why the Jockey Club went ahead with Cheltenham during the pandemic, because there wasn't a shutdown. Had they closed it down themselves, they would have been liable for the full cost of everything, and it would have bankrupted them.
Yeah, it's the same. But we can't really. Firstly, I can't really afford to have a night off. Unless, if there's a red alert, then it's totally different, you know what I mean? But because we're in a red alert till 10 o'clock, it's within my time.
Yes.
10 o'clock, I'm normally back home.
Great.
You know what I mean? So we have to.
And do you drive to Scotland every night?
Yeah, 5 nights a week.
From Walsall?
From Coventry. I live in Walsall, but I drive down to Coventry to pick my freight up and then take it up to Glasgow. It's over 600 miles a night.
Wow,
crazy. The van I'm in now, it's a 5-year, nearly 5 years old. It's done over 500,000 miles.
Blooming heck.
It's a good van. I don't want to wreck it in this weather when it comes up. I'm hoping not to wreck it in the weather. It gets turned on its side because it can easily happen. I've been up here that many times and I've seen lorries on the side because of the winds, and that's like 50, 60 mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
Today has been forecast for anything up to 100 mile an hour.
I mean, people forget that professional driving is an incredibly dangerous job, particularly in the larger wagons.
It is. It's not just the weather. It's people. I mean, I see a lot of people who they're half asleep or they're falling asleep because there's nothing on the road. It's that quiet. Concentration level.
I've got to be honest with you. I go back, obviously at 1 a.m. It's not bad. It's only from London Bridge where we are to Ascot where I live. But when you see the standard of driving, I know it sounds awful, but your average amateur driver is awful at driving. And you only notice that when you're sitting with a professional driver. But anyway, please stay safe, Jason. Let's go for Syed in London. Syed, you're on talk.
Hello. Yes, hi.
Hello.
Actually, I had called earlier where there was a debate about whether we should restore the death penalty considering the crime.
Yes.
And look, obviously what this person has done is unbelievably cruel, and he deserves to get the worst punishment possible. But I still think we cannot talk about restoring capital punishment, because I think we have repeatedly found that innocents get sentenced. There are always errors. There's a bad lawyer, or the police withhold some information, or somebody does something and you discover evidence later. And so if you put people to death, you will never have that chance. And even in the US, 1 in 10 people on death row are discovered to be innocent. And that is just too high a cost in a civilized society.
So, Said, I accept that argument. However, many of these miscarriages of justice existed before DNA evidence, and so the number of people who are victims of miscarriage of justice has fallen virtually through the floor. But also, what about the idea that Kelvin Mackenzie put forward, which is to say that the only cases where you would get the death penalty are DNA-proved child murders? Would you be more supportive of that?
No, look, I think, we are a civilized society, and we have to move beyond eye for an eye type biblical thing, because I think, as Gandhi said, it would make us all blind. So we need to rise above the anger and say, look, no matter what this person has done, we will not do it. And again, look, I don't know about DNA evidence, but again, there are cases where a boyfriend was sentenced and he spent 6 years in prison, and then they eventually found somebody who was the actual culprit. You have Birmingham 6. I mean, those guys would have been put to death.
They would have.
And that would have had terrible consequences for the entire future of Northern Ireland, etc. So this is, I think we need to hold back our anger.
Let me, Said, stick with us for a second. Let me put that to Anna McGovern. Look, the reality is what I've advocated for, which I did partly to be provocative, to take Axel Rudakubana out immediately and shoot him in the car park. Well, I may have said that on YouTube rather than on here, but that was deliberately provocative. But Said makes a fair point that you do risk a miscarriage of justice.
So I think this is where a lot of people have had the problem with whether or not they support the death penalty, because there does run that risk that someone who is genuinely innocent is then put to death.
And I remember in the case of the Guildford Four, the judge said, I am sorry that they did not bring forward a charge of treason, because that would have allowed me to give the death penalty to these people. Now, what Said is saying is they abolished the death penalty for everything other than treason, which still exists until fairly recently.
So I think personally, for the most heinous of crimes, so similar to Axel, I think what he has done, for many people, I think they are so disgusted and they're thinking, hang on, why is my taxpayer money being spent on housing this monster in prison? Which I think is why many people are then saying, well, the death penalty could be an option. People who wouldn't have advocated for it before or supported it.
I just want to say that Peter Lynch is dead and Axel Rudakubana is alive. I mean, Said, look, I think you've got two objections, nothing wrong with that. One is the purely practical, but also is the Gandhi point about more generally violence in society. What happens if I respond to you by saying that the reason I believe in this heinous punishment is because I'm prioritising the risk of violence in our community? Because many people are saying that the end of the death penalty, the end of more stiff punishments, has led to a general increase in violence in the community. And if you are a pacifist, if you are somebody who doesn't believe that violence pays, actually it's worth threatening people to not be violent, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, look, I would love to see some sort of academic or empirical study on whether without death penalty we have we have encouraged people to offend. And so I haven't seen that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the other point I wanted to say was that, look, it's a cost that we have to incur as a society for being more civilized than our predecessors from 50, 100 years ago. And I think the fact is that there are so many cases where in the US especially, you discover that the defense lawyer was asleep or the police was withholding.
What about this? What about this, Syed? Now, first of all, just to be clear, because I don't want to make it sound unfair, I am not expecting you to justify Axel Rudakubana, which you're not going to do. But what about this idea that he's been sentenced to a minimum of 58 years. That makes it technically possible to be released from prison. Now, that comes with a couple of caveats. Caveat number one is that he'd only be considered for parole after 58 years, not given it, and he'd be 70 at the time. Equally, he would never be released unless he shows some form of remorse. And next, I think we all think it's unlikely he'll live that long, simply because there's no way of protecting him in the prison. But with all of those things in mind, there is still a chance, and the families will be upset by the fact there is still a chance that he could walk free one day. Isn't that an additional torture for the family?
Look, I know, but I think, I don't know how old you are, but I'll be long gone, and I think I can trust my successors and future generations to treat him in an appropriate fashion in whatever 58 years from now. If he's still a threat to society, then they should just keep him locked up. But look, I obviously these crimes are incredibly heinous, right? But there are things like serial killers and others who have existed in society, and these are people who there's something seriously wrong with them, and I don't know whether they would be deterred by the risk of a death penalty. I mean, this guy clearly is a complete psychopathic madman. I mean, I don't know how else to even describe him. So I don't think these guys are going to be deterred. So, yeah.
Well, what about... Well, OK, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Syed's been brilliant. Thank you so much. Please call us back. Anna McGovern, we've not had enough time to talk to you, but we'll do that. But I'm going to ask you, 0344 499 1000, we've got 2 slots available on the phones. I'm going to ask you, what about the issue of punishment? What about saying we want to put Axel Rudakubana to death, stick it on the telly, because we actually want to watch the weasel suffer? More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. Let's go straight to Peter in Hartlepool. Peter, on Talk.
Hello.
Hello.
What I'm going to say is there's been a lot of discussion whether 52 years is enough or wherever it is.
58.
In my mind, I honestly believe that death penalty should be there.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why I believe that is, if you look back at Jamaica, I think it might have been 2015, I might be wrong with the year, Keir Starmer was involved in a law case which he removed the death penalty from Jamaica.
Yes.
And what happened after that was there was an awful lot of people on the streets of Jamaica which got killed.
Yes.
And I'm sure that the amount of people got killed on the streets of Jamaica prior to Keir Starmer removing the death penalty, because he was involved there as a lawyer, was a lot less than the actual death penalty itself.
Do you know something that's going to... I'm going to give you a real geek fact that people don't realise. Just to explain what on earth Peter is talking about. I don't know if you know, but the Supreme Court of Jamaica is the Privy Council, which is in Middlesex Guildhall in London. It's slightly odd, but that is a fact. So, Anna McGovern, what do you think? Bluntly, Jamaica gets rid of the death penalty, the number of murders goes up, and criminality is enhanced.
So I think that demonstrates that people are scared of the death penalty as being a consequence if they do these crimes. And I know you mentioned as well earlier, you know, if actually putting it on TV, would that be even a step that people, you know, could be taken to scare people? I personally think that, you know, in terms of the death penalty, for the most heinous of crimes, it might be enough to deter. But then for these people who are psychopaths, clearly someone like Axel, he doesn't seem like he cares.
No, he doesn't care.
He does not care. He was happy about the murder of those children. Which
In reality, one of the big things about Axel Rudakubana, one of the big advantages of punishment that Axel Rudakubana will get is that he now gets forgotten about. Effectively, you know, he's had his moment in the sun, he's had his 15 minutes of fame, which he will have enjoyed. He will have enjoyed the fact the police have to deal with him. He will have enjoyed the horror that he's causing by the things he's saying. He will have enjoyed the fiasco he caused in the court. But you know what? Tonight, the door to his cell closes, and that really is the end. And nobody will care what he does or thinks ever again. Although I will say one thing. When I was at university, I was in a debating competition, and it was about the death penalty, and obviously you have to define the method of the death penalty. And I said, I've got a system that would ensure not only is justice done, but justice is seen to be done. And I called it the National Lottery Death. It wasn't serious, but I'll tell you what the proposal was. 49 criminals with a noose around the neck and trapdoors on Saturday night live television. And it's number 8, boom, Ian Brady. There he goes. And what would happen is all of the people where the numbers came out would be immediately, the trapdoor would open, they'd be hung, and then the person with the bonus ball would be commuted to life imprisonment. And they had to come back every week until their number came up. Now that is not a serious suggestion. It was in a debating competition. But let me tell you, that would deter criminals, hosted by Norman Tebbit and Esther McVeigh.
But one thing I've got to say...
She's got nothing to say.
Well, one thing I was going to add is he might actually come back. He might be back in society again. He's being in prison for now, but I believe it's about the time when he's 70. I think it was said that he could actually be released and back into society.
I actually think that's not the big problem, Anna. I think the big problem is that in theory, he could be released. I don't believe he'll ever get out of prison. I don't believe he'll live that long. But in fact, I bluntly, I don't think he'll see his 30th birthday. I think he'll be lucky to see his 25th. But I think if I was a parent, the theoretical possibility that he could get out of prison. Remember, you know, most people watching and listening to this broadcast will be dead. Long dead by the time this sentence is up 52 years. But that means that you go to your deathbed as the parents not knowing whether he ever got out if he lives that long. I think. Well, I can't say what I think, but certainly I won't encourage, but nor will I discourage any violence in prison. Okay, Emma is in Crewe. Emma, you're on talk.
Hi there.
Hello.
Just been listening to your Hangman Lottery. It sounds a bit like Logan's Run.
I'd never watched Logan's Run.
No, there's two things. One, I don't know if you're familiar with June Slater.
No.
Right, I've been on social media and she asked a very interesting question. Who paid for Axel's lawyer?
We do.
He was
You.
very good for
Congratulations.
somebody on legal aid.
Sorry?
He was very high up for somebody on legal aid.
Yeah, they have to come up with somebody good, because then there's a possibility of an appeal afterwards based on the fact he didn't have a good enough lawyer. But let's just be clear. You won't get the quality of defence that Axel Rudakubana gets. And also, believe me, Matrix Chambers, the ambulance chasers of terrorism, as I call them, will be all over this. They'll be filing cases left, right and centre about his human rights. And we will spend further millions on this, with stupid things like Levi Belfield, should he have a wedding in prison? You know, just because what happens now is this person will sit there all day, every day, trying to come up more and more ludicrous reasons to complain, and his good friends at Pierce Bindman, or whatever they're called, and indeed at Matrix Chambers will get very, very rich filing stupid cases on his behalf.
I agree with that, but no, there's. I know he got 52 years. We got 51 years and 190 days because it was reduced because of his previous
time served.
Incarceration. Yeah. Now, I've worked in a prison. I worked in the young offenders.
Oh, did you? Which one? Do you mind me telling?
Sorry.
Was it Red Bank?
No.
No, it's just you're in Crewe. So you're quite close.
No. I worked in the young offenders, and one, I think you're correct. I don't think he'll see that long anyway because of street justice.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be a real thing, but it is. And if anybody says it isn't, they're lying.
Well, I've been told. Well, in fact, Simon Danchuk said that the prison officers will accidentally. Not be present on certain occasions, and basically, I think what will happen is I've been told they'll basically be a little bit slow to help.
Couldn't possibly comment.
Oh, I see. Go on, keep talking.
But with working in the young offenders, the problem that we have, we've got so many problems. I couldn't list them all, but one of the big problems is there's lack of deterrence. Is a massive one. And I was talking to the lady before on the phone, before I came on, and it will live with me for a long, long time. There was a lad who kept coming in for dealing drugs.
Yes.
And I won't say which area he was from, but basically, because he was a young offender, he was given the maximum was 2 years.
Yes.
Time served 1 year.
Yes.
He came in for a year. He went out again, did it again, came back for a year.
Yes.
He did that a few times. And I said to him, why? Why do you keep doing this? And his answer was clear as anything. I didn't have an answer to it. He said, I go out, he said, I deal. He says, I make about 50 grand tax-free. And this is going back about 10 years.
Yes.
He said, I make about 50 grand tax-free. I come here, I have my board, my food, my gym, my education, everything all laid on, and I'm safe.
Yes.
And he said, when I go out, I live in a squat with my mates and I deal. He said, I'm making 25 grand tax-free on average. He says, how much do you get paid?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Anna, your response?
I mean, that just says it all, isn't it? That's just shocking. 50 grand tax-free, and then he just comes back, he gets his board, he gets food, gym.
Well, of course, in Spain, they send you the bill for your dinner to the family.
Oh.
Yeah, they say no, we've provided the prison, we've not provided your dinner. and actually, sometimes people deliver food to the prison. Emma, look, you've got some professional experience, although I want to be very clear, you are not here as a professional, therefore you don't have to give us any information when asked a specific question. But what's your impression on somebody like this from what you've read in the media? I mean, Axel Rudakubana, is it somebody who could ever possibly be rehabilitated, or is this person just mad?
He can't. There's no rehabilitation there, from what I've read and what I've seen.
What makes you say that? Just because it's the love of the violence? He's not killed a rival drug dealer. He just enjoys hate.
You can get somebody who commits a murder in the heat of the moment.
Yes.
Red mist moment.
Yeah.
You can get somebody who commits a murder for revenge.
Yes.
But when it gets to the point where
they're doing it for pleasure,
and they're doing it for pleasure, and they are taking pleasure in it, and there's no shame in when they've been caught, and there's no what's the word I'm looking for?
Remorse.
That's the one. There's no remorse at the time of them knowing that they have been caught and they're being sentenced. That's a gone moment.
All right, Emma in Crewe, thank you so much. Anna McGovern, we've got 1 minute left. Perhaps you could give us a summary of your impression of what you think the public are feeling today.
I think they're very angry, and I think Keir Starmer has a lot